Hey guys, tonight we're doing something different. You're going to slip into a corset that's 2 sizes too small, paint your lips with crushed beetles, and step into the swinging doors of a frontier saloon where the whiskey is questionable and the men are even worse. This is what it was really like to be a saloon girl in the Wild West, and spoiler alert, you probably won't survive this. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Seriously, no pressure. And hey, what city are you watching from? What time is it right now for you? Let me know in the comments, I always read them. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You arrive in a place that isn't even on most maps yet. Dusty stagecoach wheels have just creaked to a halt behind you, and your boots crunch into sun-baked gravel as you step down, blinking into the hot light of a brand new frontier town. Your name's not really your name anymore. Whatever it was in St. Louis or Chicago or wherever you caught your first heartbreak, it's gone. The man who recruited you for this job said to go by something fancier, something French-sounding, maybe Celeste or Lola. Nobody here will ask for your real one. The town smells like horses, manure and desperation. There's sawdust scattered across the floors of the wide planked sidewalks to soak up spit, blood and beer. You spot the saloon immediately. There's always one, usually more. This one's called the Red Feather, and it looks halfway decent. 2 stories tall, with the upstairs windows flung open in the heat and faded velvet curtains flapping in the breeze. Piano music stumbles out the door in messy, cheerful bursts. You take a deep breath, straighten your spine and push through the batwing doors. That's the moment your old life ends. Inside it's darker and cooler. Your eyes adjust slowly to smoke curling from cigars and cheap lanterns swinging slightly from overhead beams. The bar is long and scratched, polished more by elbows than effort. A tall, bald bartender wipes a glass and doesn't look up. A card game's happening in the corner. No one's winning. Then you see her, the woman in charge. She's leaning against the banister at the top of the stairs, one hip cocked, a feather stuck in her hair like she's daring you to laugh at it. That's the madam. She sizes you up with a single blink. "Well," she drawls, "you're prettier than I expected. Let's see if you can dance." What they don't tell you is that being a saloon girl isn't all clinking glasses and corset giggles. You're not a prostitute, not officially. You might be if the money's good and you're desperate or ambitious or just too tired to say no. But that's not in your job title. Your job is to get men drinking. That's it. You make them feel like they're interesting, like they're the first man to tip his hat to you that day. And when their coin purse gets light, you move on to the next one. You're selling a performance, and your costume is tight satin and a smile. And the audition? Oh, it's real. The madam makes you sing, sway your hips, maybe even do a cartwheel if you claim you're acrobatic. If you pass, if you're young enough, thin enough, pretty enough or interesting enough, you're handed your first pair of work shoes. Heeled boots, hard leather, already worn by another sill who either ran off or got buried on Boot Hill. You wonder which. Your room is upstairs, third on the left. It has a bed, a chipped basin, a cracked mirror and not much else. It'll do. You unpack your satchel, which holds almost nothing, a comb, a photograph you keep face down, 2 pairs of stockings, and a diary you'll never have the energy to write in again. Downstairs a bell rings twice. That means they want girls on the floor. You lace your corset with trembling fingers, already learning to ration your breaths. Your lips go red, your cheeks get pinched pink, and you wrap yourself in a borrowed feather boa that smells like the sweat of 10 other women. Showtime. There's an unspoken order to the madness. The best girls, the top earners, get the choicest tables, closest to the card games or the piano. You, fresh as you are, get the bar. It's the worst place. You're on your feet all night, dodging spills, and dealing with the men too drunk to sit down or too broke to buy more than one watered-down beer. One man asks your name, slurs it back at you, then tells you his wife just died. You listen, nod, put a hand on his wrist and gently coax him into another round. He tips you a silver coin. You smile like it means something. Every night ends the same. You climb the stairs just before dawn, your legs aching, hair stuck to your neck, and your ears still ringing with laughter and piano notes. If you're lucky, you made enough tips to keep your spot. If not, the madam might knock on your door in the morning with an envelope and a warning. Pick up the pace or someone else will. There's always another girl stepping off the next coach. There's always a prettier smile waiting to outshine yours. One historical fact. Not all saloon girls were prostitutes despite the myth. Many were dancers, singers, and conversationalists hired solely to keep men drinking and spending. One quirky fact: some saloon girls wore bells sewn into their petticoats to announce their arrival. Subtle self-promotion with every step. One debate: historians still argue whether saloon life was exploitative, empowering, or somewhere messily in between. Did the job offer independence, or did it trap women in a different kind of cage? You fall asleep that first night to the creaking of floorboards and the low hum of piano notes still drifting up from below. This is your new world now. You're a saloon girl. Welcome to the show. The first thing you feel the next morning is the ache. It lives in your back, the soles of your feet, and somewhere deep in your ribs where the corset squeezed a little too hard for a little too long. You groan and roll onto your side in the lumpy mattress, blinking up at the ceiling, which has water stains that look suspiciously like dancing devils. Someone's arguing in the hallway already. Probably Frenchie and Daisy again, two of the girls who've been here longer than you. They bicker like sisters, but neither one trusts the other within 5 feet of a good-tipped customer. You sit up, stretch, and immediately regret it. Time to get dressed. The reality of your wardrobe sets in fast. You thought it would be all glamour, ruffled skirts, velvet corsets, satiny gloves, and yes, those are in the pile, but they're stiff with sweat and overuse. The lace itches. The boning in the corset has poked through in places, threatening to stab you if you breathe wrong. The boots are too tight because they belong to someone with smaller feet, probably that girl, Kitty, who vanished 2 weeks ago and left half her things behind. The heel's chipped. You'll wobble like a newborn colt, but it's all you've got. Dressing takes forever. First, the chemise, a thin cotton slip you wear under everything else to soak up sweat and maybe protect your skin from the outer garments. Then the corset, which you lace up yourself unless you can bribe another girl to do it. Pull too tight and you'll faint by noon, too loose and you'll get yelled at for looking slouchy. You learn to strike a balance. You hook it up at the front, then twist your arms behind you like some kind of desperate bird, pulling the laces tighter inch by inch. There's no breathing normally anymore. Just short, shallow gasps and a posture so straight it could give a nun a run for her money. Skirts next, layers of them, petticoats for fluff, then the actual dress, which is heavier than you'd think. It's not the dainty frilly number people imagine. It's built to withstand long nights, spilled beer and wandering hands. Sometimes it's black velvet, at other times gaudy red satin with too much trim. Every dress smells like old perfume and anxiety. Stockings are wool if it's winter, silk if you're lucky, and they roll down at the worst times. Garter belts pinch. Under it all, your body is quietly staging a rebellion. Calluses bloom on your feet. Bruises appear in strange places. Your waistline shrinks because you can't finish meals anymore. Your stomach's too compressed to hold much. You don't complain. No one does. Then comes hair and face. Your makeup box is tiny but lethal. You mix chalk powder with a little water and smear it across your cheeks to pale your complexion. Rouge goes on your lips and the apples of your cheeks, beet juice if you're broke, or imported French powder if you can get it from the madam. Some girls use arsenic to brighten their eyes. You avoid that. You're not that desperate. Not yet. Your eyebrows get darkened with charcoal, your lashes curled with a hot spoon. The hair. Curls, always curls. You heat a poker in the fire and wrap your hair around it one lock at a time. You'll burn yourself at least once a week. And then there's the corset again. Already you feel it pressing against your spine like an impatient finger. If it's the wrong kind, too short or too long, you'll get blisters at your hips or raw spots near your shoulder blades. The boning inside is usually whalebone or steel. Some girls faint during dance sets. A few just disappear into the alley and puke quietly between customers, then come back in smiling. You once heard of a girl who passed out mid-dance, toppled over like a cut tree and cracked 2 ribs. She was back the next week. Why? Because the job pays better than sewing or washing, and nobody's husband is going to give a job like this to his wife. Saloon girls make their own money, and they wear their bruises like armour. One of the other girls, Ruby, saunters into your room mid-makeup. She leans against your doorframe with a cigarette in her hand and a knowing smirk on her face. "Lace tighter, sweetheart," she says, nodding at your corset. "You don't want the madame thinking you're going soft." You laugh, but she's not wrong. The tighter you look, the more coins you get. Men like tiny waists. Makes them feel bigger, more powerful. They don't think about the internal organs you've just relocated to achieve that shape. They think about how delicate you look, how fragile, Easy to own, easy to break, but you know better. Saloon girls aren't delicate. You learn fast how to walk in heels over broken floorboards, how to smile with chapped lips, how to laugh at jokes that make your stomach turn. You learn to patch your stockings with thread stolen from the madam's drawer, and to hide hairpins in your corset just in case. One historical fact. Saloon girls often wore corsets that reshaped their ribs and compressed their stomachs so tightly that long-term organ damage wasn't uncommon. One quirky fact. Some women stuffed their corsets with horsehair or cotton to pad out the hips or bust. Victorian body contouring, basically. One debate. Historians still argue whether corsets were tools of oppression or expressions of feminine power, discipline over the body versus torture by fashion. Once you're dressed, powdered and prepped, you take one last look in the cracked mirror. You don't look like yourself anymore. You look like the role you're playing, a walking, breathing dream of silk and fire. That's good. That's the goal. Downstairs, the piano and the piano starts again. The bell rings once. You're expected on the floor in 10 minutes. Time to smile. You don't expect there to be an actual interview. But here you are, sitting on a velvet-upholstered chair that's seen better decades, across from the madam, who's lighting a cigar with one hand and sorting bills with the other. She barely looks at you. A large oil painting of a woman with wild hair and a pistol hangs crooked behind her. Maybe it's a self-portrait. Maybe it's a warning. "So," she says, blowing smoke in a lazy spiral, "can you keep men interested without taking your bloomers off?" That's the first question. There's no mention of references or prior experience. No one asks about your education, though God help you if you sound too educated. You say you can hold a conversation, you know a few jokes, and you've danced in a boarding house parlour once or twice. The madam snorts. "Sweetheart, if you can pretend to love a man while looking straight through him, you'll do just fine." That's the real job description. You're not here to fall in love. You're here to act like every lonely, busted-up cowpoke in town is the most interesting man you've ever met. You're here to sell a fantasy. It's not always sexual. It's often sadder than that. You're selling hope, attention, the illusion of importance. Sometimes you're the only person who's looked these men in the eye in weeks. The audition is informal but unavoidable. The madam calls for the piano man, named Silas, grumpy as a cactus and twice as prickly, and tells him to play something that don't make me want to die. He plunks out a tune somewhere between ragtime and tavern dirge, and you stand up and try to remember how your limbs are supposed to move. You do a few turns, flash a smile, shake your skirts like you mean it. The madam watches without expression, then interrupts. "Laugh like you're drunken flirting." You do. Then she says, "Now do it like you hate yourself a little." That's when she nods, finally satisfied. She waves her cigar like a scepter. "You'll start tonight. You last a week. I'll give you a proper bed instead of that cot in the corner. Any man gives you trouble. You come straight to me or Billy behind the bar. Don't take anything that doesn't jingle, don't drink unless it's watered down, and don't ever, ever let a miner walk you home alone." You nod, trying to absorb all of it. Your throat is dry. You're not sure if it's nerves or just the heat. Then comes the paperwork, if you can call it that. No contract, just your name, a few vague rules scrawled on the back of a liquor invoice, and a warning that a lady's reputation is her only real currency. Irony hits you a second later. You're not exactly a lady anymore, are you? You're shown to a narrow room just off the kitchen to store your things. It's barely bigger than a closet, with a dented wash basin and a cot with a yellowed pillow. You won't sleep there long if you earn enough to upgrade to an upstairs room. That's the goal. The upstairs girls get windows, doors that lock, and the occasional customer who leaves flowers instead of bruises. The kitchen girls ignore you at first, heads down over dirty pots and endless potatoes. One gives you a sidelong glance and mutters, "She'll be gone by Tuesday." It's Monday. That night you're handed a tray of drinks and told to flirt with the men at table 3. No one explains what flirt means in this context. You figure it out fast. A hand on a shoulder here, a laugh that's a little too loud there. You remember that phrase, pretend to love a man while looking straight through him. It works. Table 3 is 3 prospectors and a ranch hand who smells like cowhide and kerosene. You pour drinks, let one of them call you darling, and steer the conversation just enough to keep the whiskey flowing. Every so often the madam sweeps by like a velvet hawk, watching to see who's working and who's slouching. If you stand still too long, she snaps her fingers. Motion equals money. Smiling equals money. You're an actress on a sticky floor stage and your paycheck depends on how well you perform. You're not allowed to sit unless you're invited, and even then, it's risky. Some men think a girl who sits wants something more. Others just want company while they lose at cards. It's a tightrope walk. Too cold, you make no tips. Too warm, you risk a shove into the alley. Midway through your shift, a miner tries to grab your hip and you slap his hand away. He stumbles up, red-faced, shouting something about uppity city girls. The bartender, Billy, appears behind you so fast it's like he teleported. He hauls the miner out by the collar and throws him into the street. Everyone claps. You're shaking anyway. Later, in the back room, the madam offers you a drink and a nod of approval. "Not bad for your first night," she says. "You'll toughen up." You already feel it happening. Your nerves fray a little. Your spine straightens. You learn not to flinch when someone hollers, not to cry when someone sneers. You survive. That's your job now. One historical fact. Many saloon girls were hired through vague advertisements in newspapers or word-of-mouth recruiters who offered entertainment work in western towns, often leaving out the rougher details. One quirky fact. Some saloons required girls to pass a mock flirtation test before being hired, essentially a live demonstration of how charming and marketable they were under pressure. One debate. Some historians believe madams acted as protectors for their girls, while others argue they were just another layer of exploitation in a system built to drain every ounce of charm and coin out of desperate young women. You return to your cot that night with sore cheeks from smiling and aching feet from constant motion. The pillow smells like dust. You close your eyes and dream of quieter places, but even in sleep you can hear the piano still playing. You don't expect there to be an actual interview, but here you are, sitting on a velvet upholstered chair that's seen better decades, across from the madam, who's lighting a cigar with one hand and sorting bills with the other. She barely looks at you. A large oil painting of a woman with wild hair and a pistol hangs crooked behind her. Maybe it's a self-portrait. Maybe it's a warning. "So," she says, blowing smoke in a lazy spiral, "can you keep men interested without taking your bloomers off?" That's the first question. There's no mention of references or prior experience. No one asks about your education, though God help you if you sound too educated. You say you can hold a conversation, you know a few jokes, and you've danced in a boarding house parlour once or twice. The madam snorts. "Sweetheart, if you can pretend to love a man while looking straight through him, you'll do just fine." That's the real job description. You're not here to fall in love. You're here to act like every lonely, busted-up cowpoke in town is the most interesting man you've ever met. You're here to sell a fantasy. It's not always sexual, it's often sadder than that. You're selling hope, attention, the illusion of importance. Sometimes you're the only person who's looked these men in the eye in weeks. The audition is informal but unavoidable. The madam calls for the piano man, named Silas, grumpy as a cactus and twice as prickly, and tells him to play something that don't make me want to die. He plunks out a tune somewhere between ragtime and tavern dirge, and you stand up and try to remember how your limbs are supposed to move. You do a few turns, flash a smile, shake your skirts like you mean it. The madam watches without expression, then interrupts. "Laugh like you're drunk and flirting." You do, then she says, "Now do it like you hate yourself a little." That's when she nods, finally satisfied. She waves her cigar like a scepter. "You'll start tonight. You'll last a week. I'll give you a proper bed instead of that cot in the corner. Any man gives you trouble, you come straight to me or Billy behind the bar. Don't take anything that doesn't jingle. Don't drink unless it's watered down. And don't ever, ever let a miner walk you home alone." You nod, trying to absorb all of it. Your throat is dry. You're not sure if it's nerves or just the heat. Then comes the paperwork, if you can call it that. No contract, just your name, a few vague rules scrawled on the back of a liquor invoice, and a warning that a lady's reputation is her only real currency. Irony hits you a second later. You're not exactly a lady anymore, are you? You're shown to a narrow room just off the kitchen to store your things. It's barely bigger than a closet, with a dented wash basin and a cot with a yellowed pillow. You won't sleep there long if you earn enough to upgrade to an upstairs room. That's the goal. The upstairs girls get windows, doors that lock, and the occasional customer who leaves flowers instead of bruises. The kitchen girls ignore you at first, heads down over dirty pots and endless potatoes. One gives you a sidelong glance and mutters, She'll be gone by Tuesday. It's Monday. That night you're handed a tray of drinks and told to flirt with the men at table 3. No one explains what flirt means in this context. You figure it out fast. A hand on a shoulder here, a laugh that's a little too loud there. You remember that phrase, pretend to love a man while looking straight through him. It works. Table 3 is 3 prospectors and a ranch hand who smells like cowhide and kerosene. You pour drinks, let one of them call you darling, and steer the conversation just enough to keep the whiskey flowing. Every so often the madam sweeps by like a velvet hawk, watching to see who's working and who's slouching. If you stand still too long, she snaps her fingers. Motion equals money, smiling equals money. You're an actress on a sticky floor stage and your paycheck depends on how well you perform. You're not allowed to sit unless you're invited, and even then it's risky. Some men think a girl who sits wants something more. Others just want company while they lose at cards. It's a tightrope walk. Too cold, you make no tips. Too warm, you risk a shove into the alley. Midway through your shift, a miner tries to grab your hip and you slap his hand away. He stumbles up red-faced, shouting something about uppity city girls. The bartender, Billy, appears behind you so fast it's like he teleported. He hauls the miner out by the collar and throws him into the street. Everyone claps. You're shaking anyway. Later in the back room, the madam offers you a drink and a nod of approval. Not bad for your first night, she says. You'll toughen up. You already feel it happening. Your nerves fray a little. Your spine straightens. You learn not to flinch when someone hollers, not to cry when someone sneers. You survive. That's your job now. One historical fact. Many saloon girls were hired through vague advertisements in newspapers or word-of-mouth recruiters who offered entertainment work in western towns, often leaving out the rougher details. One quirky fact, some saloons required girls to pass a mock flirtation test before being hired, essentially a live demonstration of how charming and marketable they were under pressure. One debate. Some historians believe madams acted as protectors for their girls, while others argue they were just another layer of exploitation in a system built to drain every ounce of charm and coin out of desperate young women. You return to your cot that night with sore cheeks from smiling and aching feet from constant motion. The pillow smells like dust. You close your eyes and dream of quieter places, but even in sleep you can hear the piano still playing. There's no real morning here, just degrees of exhaustion. You wake up not because you're rested, but because the sun slices through the high windows and someone drops a tray of glasses in the hallway. You groan, roll over, and immediately regret it. Your knees pop, your shoulders feel like they've been rolled over by a wagon wheel, and the imprint of your corset boning is still etched into your back like some kind of cruel tattoo. You splash water from the cracked basin onto your face. It's lukewarm and smells faintly of rust, but it shocks your eyes open. There's a sliver of mirror nailed crooked to the wall, and it shows you a woman with smeared rouge and pillow-creased cheeks. That's you, or someone wearing your skin. You smile at her, test your voice with a half-whispered "mornin'," and try to believe it's going to be a good day. Spoiler, it won't be. Your daily routine isn't like anyone else's in town. For starters, your morning starts in the late afternoon, after a handful of hours passed out in your clothes, still half laced into the previous night. You can't afford to fully undress most nights. Undoing the corset takes too long, and putting it back on by yourself is pure agony. So you develop a method. Loosen it just enough to breathe, leave your boots half on, and fall into bed like a collapsed marionette. This, you're told, is normal. The first real task of the day? Getting clean, at least by frontier standards. There are no bathtubs unless you pay, and even then the water's been used by 3 people before you. So you settle for a bucket bath, tepid water poured over a washcloth, scrubbing your arms and neck while trying not to get your skirt soaked. You pinch your cheeks for colour, dab on a little powder, and pray that no one notices the circles under your eyes. Downstairs, the saloon's already starting to rumble. The floors have been swept barely. The smell of last night's spilled beer clings to the walls like a ghost. The piano is quiet, its keys covered with a threadbare cloth, until Silas shows up around dusk. You help wipe down the bar, swat a mouse off the counter, and reshelve bottles, some full, most empty. Your shift officially begins when the lamps are lit and the front doors swing wide open to welcome another round of sunburned, saddle-sore dreamers. This is when the performance begins. The first few customers are always quiet. Ranchers and blacksmiths who work sun up to sundown, drinking with heavy hands and heavier silences. You ease in beside them, slow and polite, asking how the cattle are doing, how the crops are faring, if their backs still ache from last week's storm. They don't say much, but if you're lucky, they leave a nickel on the bar when they finish their drink. By 7 o'clock, the energy changes. Miners start rolling in, loud, dirty, pockets heavy with gold dust or fool's gold. No one can ever really tell. They're rowdy and unpredictable, but they tip well if you pretend their stories are interesting. You ask them how deep the shaft is, how many rocks fell this time, whether anyone's still down there. One guy swears he struck a vein that'll make him a millionaire by Christmas. You say, well, don't forget little old me when you're rich, and he throws $2 silver in your garter. You tuck them away fast. There's always someone watching. Around 8, the saloon hits its stride. The music kicks in, the tables fill, the air thickens with smoke and sweat. You're dancing now, not in some grand theatrical way, but weaving between tables, swaying to the music, pulling men out of their chairs for a clumsy waltz across the uneven floor. Your feet start to blister, but you keep smiling. You smile so hard your jaw cramps. You laugh like you mean it. Sometimes you do mean it, which is even stranger. And in between all of that, you pour drinks. Not just to make money, but because keeping men drunk keeps them happy, and happy men don't start brawls, or at least not as many. You're a peacekeeper with a tray of watered-down whiskey and a crooked grin. There's no official end to your shift. It tapers off somewhere around 2 or 3 in the morning, when the piano man starts playing slower songs and the last card game ends in curses and empty pockets. You sneak a sandwich from the kitchen, cold meat between stale bread, and sit on the back steps to eat in peace. You don't care if the alley smells like horse piss. It's quiet, and no one's asking you to smile. You watch the stars blink above the rooftops and think about how many people you've touched today. Shoulders, elbows, rough hands brushing against yours as you passed them, drinks, or pulled them onto the floor. You can feel the grime of 100 strangers on your skin. It sticks even after you scrub. Back inside, the madam's counting coins. She always counts. She knows how much each girl made down to the penny. You hand over your cut, half of everything you earned, sometimes more if you borrowed a dress or broke a glass. What's left is yours. If you're smart, you'll hide some in your boot heel or behind the loose brick upstairs. Trusting a madam with your future is like trusting a rattlesnake to mind your baby. One historical fact. Saloon girls often work 12 to 16 hours straight, with no breaks and no set shifts. Their pay depended entirely on drink commissions and tips. One quirky fact. Some saloons issued girls punch cards, literally hole punched each time they convinced a customer to buy a drink. 10 drinks, bonus $1, like the saddest coffee shop loyalty program ever. One debate. Scholars disagree whether these daily routines were survivable long term, or whether most saloon girls burned out after a few years and disappeared into marriage, madness, or oblivion. You finally collapse onto your cot just before dawn. Your arms are bruised, your ankles swollen, your corset still laced because you're too tired to undo it. The only thing louder than your heartbeat is the silence once the music stops. You lie there staring at the ceiling and wonder what it would be like to sleep for a week, or to wake up somewhere where you don't have to smile. It doesn't take long to realise that the only constant in your life now is the exchange of things, your time and your touch, your smile, all for cash, and you learn quickly that not all coins are created equal. Some clang solid and honest on the bar top, others feel too light, worn thin, maybe counterfeit. Still you pocket what you can, because here money is survival, and survival doesn't ask questions. You don't have a salary, no set wage, no paycheck. What you have is a cut, maybe half, sometimes less, of every drink you coax out of a man's hands and into his belly. You could sell watered-down whiskey to a grieving widower if you fluttered your eyelashes just right, and you have. You hate how easy it's become. The more drinks they buy, the more you earn. So you laugh louder, lean in closer and gently suggest that maybe another round would help them forget just a little bit more. Tips are your lifeblood. There's no real rhyme or reason to them. Some men drop coins like it's nothing, just for the pleasure of seeing you bend to pick them up. Others will talk your ear off for an hour and leave you nothing but a whiff of tobacco breath and the mild stink of disappointment. You get better at spotting the spenders, the ones with clean boots and stained knuckles, with gold toothpicks and loud laughs. You cater to them like they're kings. The broke ones get a polite smile and a slow retreat. There are tricks, of course, you learn to upcharge, the drinks the men buy for you. They're mostly tea or coloured water in a shot glass. You sell the illusion of camaraderie, not the alcohol itself. The madam calls it preservation. You call it playing smart. No girl lasts long if she drinks everything a man hands her. If you did, you'd be sloshed by sundown, broke by midnight, and dead in the gutter by the weekend. And then there are the side deals. Officially, you're not a prostitute. The saloon's license says entertainment. But in practice, things get blurrier than a bottle of bootleg gin. Some girls go upstairs with men. Sometimes for an extra few dollars, sometimes for jewellery, sometimes just because they're tired of saying no. It's not always about sex. Sometimes it's just about company, real or pretend. You've seen grown men pay to lie next to a girl and cry. You've seen others hand over gold coins just to kiss a woman's hand and pretend she's someone else. You, though? You haven't gone upstairs. Not yet. Not officially. The madam doesn't push. She says, "You'll know when it's worth it. Just make sure you get paid first." That's rule number 1. The house always gets its share. If you go rogue, if you make a deal in the alley, or sneak off without cutting the madam in, word gets around. And not the good kind of word. There are stories, always stories, about girls who broke the rules. One, called Millie, supposedly ran off with a customer who promised her a wedding ring and a house in Denver. They found her a week later in a dried-up creek bed, still wearing her garter and one earring. No one claimed the body. The madam just sighed and gave her room to a girl from Wichita the same day. So you keep your dealings honest. Or as honest as they can be in a place like this. You flirt, you dance, you pour drinks. You take tips and flash smiles like you're made of them. And sometimes you lie through your teeth to get another $1, like when you tell a gambler he's your favourite, or when you say you've never met a man so brave, or that you're saving up to open a flower shop, that last one. You say it often. You almost believe it yourself now. Your earnings go in 3 places: the madam's till, your food and your hidden stash. You've got a spot under a loose floorboard, behind the wash basin. It's not much yet. A few dollars in coins, some folded bills, a cameo necklace you won in a bet. It's not enough to leave, but it's enough to dream. And dreams out here are the most expensive thing of all. Every week a man named Walter comes around with a bag full of fake coins. He exchanges them for a cut of your tips, passing off clipped silver or foreign money that looks close enough to fool a drunk. It's risky, but sometimes you're desperate. If you get caught using it at the general store, the shopkeeper throws you out. Or worse, he tells the sheriff. You don't ask where Walter gets them. You just nod, trade, and hope the coins make it through the night. One night, a banker from Kansas City walks in. He smells like cigars and citrus oil. His shoes are polished. You make more in 1 hour with him than you did all week. He buys round after round, mostly just to watch you pour. He doesn't talk much, but he watches you like he's memorising your silhouette. When he leaves, he presses $5 silver into your hand. "For your trouble," he says. You don't ask what he means by trouble. You just thank him, slide the coins into your garter, and exhale for the first time in hours. One historical fact. Saloon girls were often paid through a commission system, typically receiving half the price of each drink they sold, incentivizing them to keep the booze flowing. One quirky fact. Many Western towns created their own tokens or script to be used in saloons, essentially local bar currency, which could be exchanged for drinks or entertainment, but was often worthless outside. One debate. Scholars argue whether this economic system exploited women's labour or gave them rare financial independence in a time when most professions barred female workers. At the end of the night, you count your earnings. Some coins are slit with beer, one still has a tooth mark in it. You don't care. You just count. Every $1 gets you closer to that flower shop, or at least farther from here. You fall asleep to the jingle of coins hidden under your floorboard and dream of a place where men pay to listen to you talk, not just to touch. Let's talk about the drinks, because while you're out here pretending to be a sweet-talking enchantress with dreams in your eyes, half your shift revolves around slinging rot-gut liquor that could probably strip paint off a wall. The bottles behind the bar might look fancy, imported labels, foreign-sounding names, but most of it's just cheap whiskey cut with turpentine, tobacco spit, or something worse. It's strong enough to make a mule weep and sometimes cloudy enough that you can't see through it. But men drink it anyway, and they buy it from you because you smile like it's champagne. The drinks you pour aren't the same as the ones you drink. You learn that trick your first week. The madame teaches you herself. Never drink the real stuff, she says. You'll be on the floor by midnight and ruined by Sunday. Instead, the saloon stocks something called ladies' tea. It's just coloured water in a bottle that looks like bourbon, and it's your best friend. When a customer buys you a drink, you tilt your glass back like you mean it, let the liquid touch your lips, and pray he's too drunk to notice it doesn't burn. But even that can backfire. Some men want you to get drunk. They think it makes you more fun, more pliable, more willing to do what they want upstairs. You've mastered the art of fake tipsiness. A giggle here, a stumble there. You twirl a curl around your finger and slur your words just enough to keep them interested. But not too much. You don't want to look like easy prey. The real stuff, though. You've tried it. Once. You were dared by Frenchie, who said it would build character. One shot and your throat burned like a blacksmith's forge. Your eyes watered. Your stomach clenched like it wanted to reject your entire life. You laughed it off then, but your body remembered. It still flinches every time a bottle is uncorked too close. And the pipe? That's a different temptation. Opium is the saloon's secret twin. Not every girl uses it, but enough do that you notice when someone's eyes glaze over during a dance. There's a small back room, curtained off from the main floor, with low couches and a haze of perfumed smoke. It's for special clients. Men who pay extra to recline, relax and drift. Sometimes they invite a girl to sit with them to share the pipe, to whisper in their ear while their thoughts float far above their body. You've only gone in once. The smell was sweet and heavy, almost sickly. It made your heart beat slow, made the world feel like it was underwater. But it also made you forget your name for a minute, and that scared you more than any pistol ever has. Some girls swear by it. Takes the edge off, they say. Lets you float past the worst parts. But you've seen what it does after a while. One girl, Addie, started using it nightly. At first, she was just softer, sleepier. Then she started missing shifts, talking to people who weren't there, giggling at nothing. Last you heard, she wandered out into the desert barefoot, chasing something only she could see.
And then there's what happens upstairs.
The saloon has rooms, officially meant for boarding travellers, but everyone knows that's a joke. Most are used by gamblers too drunk to stumble home or businessmen who don't want to sleep alone. Sometimes they rent a room with a bottle and ask for company. That's where the unspoken choices begin. You've seen the top girls go up with men. Some do it for the money, flat fee, negotiated before anything happens. Others do it as part of the long game. Keep a rich client happy, and he'll come back with deeper pockets. Maybe even marry you, if you're the type to believe in that kind of fantasy. You've also seen what happens when it goes wrong. The girl comes down with a split lip, a missing shoe, her eyes flat and too quiet. No one talks about it. There are no police in this town who care, and even if there were, what would you say? He paid. She agreed. Consent is a slippery thing when money's involved and dignity's on the line. You don't judge the girls who go upstairs, you just haven't yet. You hold that line barely. Maybe because you still believe there's a way out. Maybe because you're too stubborn to fold. Or maybe because you know that once you cross that threshold, you don't come back the same. One man offers you $20 to spend the night. It's the most anyone's ever offered. He says he's lonely. He says he won't even touch you if you don't want him to. He smells like peppermint and sorrow. You almost say yes. Instead, you smile, take his hand and ask if he wants to dance. He does. You both know it's a stall, but it buys you another hour of safety. One historical fact, in many Western saloons, parlour girls were not officially prostitutes, but were expected to accompany customers, often leading to transactional relationships beyond the dance floor. One quirky fact, some girls developed a personal code. Flowers in their hair meant no upstairs, a certain colour ribbon meant negotiable, and a lace glove drop was a signal to the madam to intervene. One debate. Scholars argue whether saloon girls had agency over their special services, or whether the economic pressure made consent meaningless. Was it choice or survival disguised as one? At night, you lie in bed and stare at the ceiling. You count the days you've managed to hold your line. You wonder how many more you have left in you. And you think about that $20, folded in a customer's pocket, still waiting for someone who says yes. The piano man shows up every evening, just before sunset, dragging his sleeves halfway up his forearms and scowling like someone who's been awake too long and paid too little. His name is Silas. Nobody knows his last name or where he came from, but he plays like he made a deal with the devil back in New Orleans and won on a technicality. His fingers are long and cracked, his beard is always a bit damp with bourbon, and he refuses to take requests unless they come with silver, and even then he's likely to play the wrong song just to prove a point. The saloon doesn't breathe until that first chord. It's like someone opens a window inside the airless room. One sharp note, then a slide into something wild and rhythmic, and suddenly the floorboards start to sway. The music changes everything. It makes the whiskey taste better, it makes the smoke hang prettier, and it makes you move like you mean it. You start dancing early before the place fills up because it's your job to set the tone. You can't just stand around looking decorative. You've got to pull men in, one sway at a time. The madam wants motion, movement, the illusion of life. You're a lure with a heartbeat, dragging in lonely fish from a sea of dust and regret. Your feet find the rhythm first, then your hips, then your shoulders. You twirl, smile, clap along, and wait for the right moment to grab a hand. Men rarely say no. You guide them to the open space in front of the piano where the sawdust is thickest, where the floor's been stomped into soft grooves by years of shuffling boots. You dance with old men, young ones, gamblers, miners, cowhands and drifters. Some lead, most don't, doesn't matter. You make them feel like they're good at it. And you keep smiling. The dances aren't fancy. No one's doing waltzes unless someone from out east is visiting and insists on it. Mostly it's fast, stompy two-steps or swaying in circles until someone trips. The piano speeds up, slows down, turns into something ragged and mournful for a verse, then kicks up again. It's chaos, but somehow it works. You're not the only one dancing. The other girls join in when they can, sometimes linking arms or sending in a mock circle just to get attention. Every move is strategic. You're not dancing for fun. You're dancing for tips, for drink orders, for the hope that some man who's lost 5 hands of poker and a week's wages will think buying you a drink will turn his luck around. And then there's singing. You never planned on it. But one night Silas plays something familiar. A song you half remember from your childhood, something your mother used to hum while scrubbing the floors, and you start singing softly along. He notices, starts playing louder. Someone hears you, then another. A man slaps the table and yells, "Let the girl sing!" And suddenly you're standing by the piano, heart in your throat, mouth dry, wondering if you've just made the biggest mistake of your short, tired life. But then the words come. Your voice is thin at first, then steadier. The room hushes just enough for you to hear yourself. It's not operatic, it's not polished, but it's raw and true and full of ache. And in that moment the whole saloon leans in. When you finish, the room erupts into claps and hoots. Someone throws a coin, then another. You pick them up slowly, blinking in disbelief. The madam just nods from the back like she expected it all along. After that, you sing a few nights a week. Nothing scheduled. Just when the mood hits and the piano man isn't too drunk to follow your key. You stick to ballads, old tunes, stories in song. Men love a sad song. It makes them feel like their own heartbreak matters more. And if you end on a sweet note, they're more likely to buy another drink and slip an extra coin into your bodice. You don't call yourself a singer, though. That feels too big, too official. You're still just a girl in a corset, hoping her voice will hold out through another smoky night. One night, a travelling salesman offers to take you on the road. Says he books shows all across the territory, and you've got a voice that could make him rich. You almost laugh in his face, but he's serious. He pulls out a pocketbook and scribbles up a name, his agent in San Francisco. If you ever get out of here, he says, look him up. You tuck the note into your stocking, just in case. But singing comes with risk. The more attention you get, the more jealous the other girls become. One of them accidentally spills wine on your dress the next night. Another tells a customer you lip sync. You learn to watch your back, even while you're watching your pitch. Popularity here is like dynamite. You might use it to blow open a future, or it might go off in your face. One historical fact. Many saloon girls doubled as performers, singing and dancing as part of their job to keep the crowd lively and encourage drinking. One quirky fact. Some piano players were paid not in cash, but in free drinks or room and board, explaining why many were constantly drunk or borderline feral. One debate. Historians disagree on whether these performance roles gave women a legitimate path into entertainment careers, or just further exploited their talents for the sake of the bar's profits. That night, after the last note fades and Silas mutters something about his fingers being cursed, you sit alone on the piano bench and let your hands rest on the keys. You don't know how to play, not really, but you press one note, middle, C, and listen to it ring out into the empty saloon. It sounds like hope, or maybe just a lie you've learned to sing real pretty. You never forget the sound of a gun being cocked in the middle of a song. It cuts through piano notes like a knife through silk. One second you're mid-laugh with a customer who smells like peppermint and saddle leather. The next, the whole saloon freezes like someone hit pause. All eyes snap toward the source, and there it is, a shiny silver revolver being waved by a man with shaking hands and whiskey-glazed eyes. You stop breathing. Everyone does. The bartender Billy is already moving, slow and steady like he's stepping across thin ice. No sudden motions. The piano man eases off the keys, hands lifted. The madam's nowhere in sight. She always disappears when bullets show up. That's a survival tactic. The rest of you just wait and hope to God he's too drunk to aim straight. That's saloon life. 1 minute you're twirling in skirts and laughter. The next, you're crouched behind a poker table praying the walls are thick enough to stop a stray bullet. Fights break out over cards, over girls, over who looked at someone's horse funny. This place is a powder keg, and all it takes is one insult or one lost hand for someone to start lighting matches. You're not new anymore. You know what to do. You duck instinctively behind the nearest barrel, lift your skirts just enough to move fast and try not to scream. Screaming makes you a target. You learned that after the first time a barstool flew past your head and shattered on the floor behind you. This particular gunman is named Clancy. Or maybe Clarence. You can't remember. He's in here often, usually drunk, usually harmless. But tonight, he's shouting about someone cheating at cards and how he's not going to be made a fool of. He waves the gun around like he's trying to swat flies with it. You peek over the edge of the table just long enough to see Billy reach out, grab the barrel and twist. One shot goes off, deafening, a puff of smoke, a chandelier chain snaps, and the whole thing swings down and crashes into a table, sending glass and cards and whiskey flying. But miraculously no one's hit. Clancy's tackled, disarmed and dragged outside like a sack of potatoes. You exhale for what feels like the first time in minutes. Everyone claps. Of course they do. It's a show to them. It always is. Cleanup begins immediately. Broken glass is swept into piles. Blood, only from a minor cut this time, is wiped up with old towels, and the piano man picks up the tune like nothing happened. You go right back to work. That's the rule. You don't stop, you don't show fear. The customers expect the girls to be unshakable, like part of the decor. Frilly, smiling and fireproof. But you're shaking on the inside. Fights don't always end cleanly. A few months back, a man accused one of the girls, Rosie, of stealing from his coat while he was passed out. She denied it, the madam backed her up, but the man didn't care. He came back with friends, busted through the back door and dragged Rosie out by the hair. Billy stopped them eventually, but not before she got a black eye and a bruised rib. The sheriff never came. The law only shows up when someone's bleeding in the street, or when a business owner complains about the smell. That's why you learn to defend yourself. Every girl carries something. Hairpins sharp enough to draw blood, garters with hidden blades, perfume bottles filled with a mix of rosewater and pepper. You keep your own secret weapon tucked into your boot. A small Derringer pistol, a gift from Ruby after your second week. Don't hesitate, she said, eyes hard. You pull it, you shoot, or don't bother. You haven't had to use it yet, but just knowing it's there helps you sleep. The saloon has rules posted on a sign by the bar, but no one really reads them. No firearms inside, no spitting, no fighting. Every one of those rules is broken nightly. The bouncer, a man called Tree because he's as wide as one, enforces them with a mix of threats and the occasional headlock. He's quiet, calm and terrifying. Most folks know better than to cross him. Still, the chaos is constant. Chairs get broken weekly. The walls have bullet holes, some patched, some left as warnings. One of the mirrors above the bar is cracked from when a whiskey bottle was thrown during an argument about politics. You don't even know what the argument was. You just remember diving under a table and swearing when the glass rained down like glittering teeth. And yet, somehow the danger becomes normal. Not good, not sale, but geprägt. It keeps you alert, keeps you fast. You learn to read a room in seconds. Who's drunk enough to tip? Who's too drunk to handle rejection? Who's watching you too closely? You learn to spot the twitch of a hand going for a holster before anyone else. You learn to smile at the right man at the right time to stop him from ruining everyone's night. One historical fact. Gunfights in saloons weren't just a movie myth. Many frontier towns saw regular violence inside these establishments, often due to gambling, intoxication, or personal grudges. One quirky fact. Some saloons hired local actors to reenact fake gunfights during slow nights to entertain tourists and gamblers, complete with blanks and fake blood. Real drama, less risk. One debate. Historians question how frequent actual gun violence was, versus how much was exaggerated in newspapers and dime novels? Was it really that wild, or just good for business to seem dangerous? By the end of the night, after the adrenaline fades and your ears stop ringing, you wipe a smear of soot off your cheek and check your boots for damage. The chandelier's gone, the broken table's already been replaced with a crate and a tablecloth. It's like nothing happened. You look around and realise the worst part isn't the chaos, it's how easily everyone goes back to normal. You wonder what that says about you, and then you go back to work because that's what saloon girls do. You take your time getting ready tonight. Not because you're feeling glamorous or sentimental, no, it's because you've developed a system. Every layer, every curl, every pin is strategic. Armour, really, the kind to do with sequins. You open your little wooden vanity box and lay out your tools like a surgeon preparing for a risky operation. Powder, rouge, cold cream, pins, lashes made of horsehair, a cracked handheld mirror, and a stub of soap that's technically lavender if you breathe deep enough and squint. You begin with your face, chalk first, basic white powder to even things out and dull your sunburnt nose. It cakes fast, especially in the heat, but under lamplight it makes your skin look soft and cool, almost aristocratic. You follow it with a touch of rouge, blended high across your cheekbones and dabbed on your lips until they look fuller and redder than they actually are. Some girls use carmine, made from crushed beetles, and it stains like a sin you can't scrub off. Others favour a dab of mercuric face cream that promises glow and longevity, and quietly shaves years off your liver. You stick to what works and doesn't kill you outright. Your eyebrows are darkened with burnt matchstick ash. Not too much, you're not going for circus clown, just sultry but tired. A touch of lamp black smudged under your eyes adds a smoky effect that makes you look like you've survived something mysterious. You have. Then it's time for hair. Yours is pinned up in a loose mass of curls, not natural ones, but the kind coaxed from a heated iron and a prayer. You burn your fingers nightly, and the smell of scorched hair now reminds you of payday. The transformation is unsettling. You don't look like yourself, you look like a painting. Someone men will tip coins to, just for the chance to say they saw you blink. And that's the goal. You put on the mask, and you wear it better than most. Wigs are common, though you haven't resorted to one, yet. Some girls swear by them, claiming they save time and hide hair that has gone stringy from sweat and smoke. The wigs come in curls and braids, pinned and powdered, sometimes with ribbons sewn in. But they itch, they slide, and there's always a chance a drunk will tug it clean off your head in the middle of a dance. Then comes the costume. You call it a costume now because calling it a dress would be generous. Tonight's piece is crimson with black trim and a hem just above the ankle, scandalous by Eastern standards, but tame out here. The neckline dips lower than your morals, the sleeves are puffed like you're hosting a funeral in a fever dream, and there's enough fringe to make a stage curtain jealous. It's heavier than it looks. Layers of satin, hidden pockets for perfume and pins, a tiny flask strapped to your thigh. You slip on your corset, a deep breath and a long groan, and cinch it just tight enough to lift your chest and take your appetite. Your waist disappears, your spine protests, your lungs compress, but you look damn good. And that, of course, is what counts. Boots come next, heeled, laced up to mid-calf, slicked with a bit of oil to shine under the lantern light. You've added an insole cut from an old newspaper to make them bearable. Your toes hate you, but your calves look incredible. Finally, accessories. A choker necklace, a pair of earrings, one missing its match, a fan tucked into your garter, and a silk ribbon tied in your hair that you think belong to someone else. You don't ask. The things girls leave behind in this place usually come with stories no one wants to tell. By the time you're finished, the mirror reflects someone who could make a man forget his wedding vows and still smile about it afterward. You glance down at your hands, nails scrubbed clean, knuckles bruised from yesterday's near scuffle, and you wonder how long you can keep this up. But the bell rings downstairs. Time to stop thinking. Out on the floor, the lighting does most of the work for you. Low, golden, and just smoky enough to blur the imperfections. You step into the saloon like you own it. You feel the shift. Men turn to look. Some nod, others grin, one raises a glass in silent greeting. You don't smile too fast. You let the gaze settle, let the silence stretch just a second too long before you offer a smirk. Just enough mystery to make them pay for the next moment. The illusion works. You dance, you flirt, you laugh like you haven't cried in weeks. A man tells you you're the most beautiful thing he's seen west of the Mississippi. You thank him and pretend it's the first time you've heard that this month. Someone else tries to grab your waist. Too bold, too fast, and you step aside with the grace of someone who's done this 100 times and hasn't killed anyone yet. Later, backstage, you unpin your hair and let the sweat roll down your back. Ruby's sitting at the vanity beside you, blotting her forehead with a handkerchief soaked in lavender oil. "Think we'll still be doing this in 10 years?" she asks. You don't answer right away. You both know the truth. The makeup, the gowns, the illusion, it's not forever. It's borrowed time. One historical fact. Saloon girls relied heavily on makeup and stylized fashion to stand out in dark, crowded bars. Arsenic-based face powders and lead-rich rouges were common despite their toxicity. One quirky fact, some saloon girls mixed coal dust into their cold cream to create makeshift eyeliner and experimented with shellac to shape their lashes long before mascara was invented. One debate. Scholars argue whether the elaborate beauty routines empowered women by giving them control over their image, or merely reinforced their objectification by tailoring them to male desire. You wipe off the paint, peel off the corset, and return to the version of yourself that no one tips for. The mirror doesn't lie, but it doesn't comfort either. You've become very good at wearing someone else's face. The question is whether you remember your own. They say women are each other's worst enemies, but in the saloon, it's more complicated than that. The girls are your competition, sure, but they're also the only ones who understand what it feels like to be trapped inside silken expectations. They know what it means to count tips by candlelight, to smile at men you hate, to dance until your toes bleed and your corset's soaked through. You share secrets and powder, rage and ribbons, but you also know not to trust anyone completely. Take Frenchie, for example. She's been here longer than almost anyone. Nobody knows if she's actually French. Her accent comes and goes, but she swears she once danced in Paris and served drinks to royalty. King of Belgium, she says, lips red as blood, tipped me a diamond earring. Just one. No one's ever seen the earring. Still, she walks like she owns the joint. She gets the best tables, the wealthiest clients, and the choicest dresses from the madam's closet. And she guards it all like a dog with a bone. Then there's Daisy. Sweet, round-faced, always humming something. She acts like a lamb, but she's the most ruthless one in the building. You once saw her smile as she accidentally stepped on another girl's hem mid-dance, sending her sprawling into a pitcher of beer. Daisy giggled and offered her a handkerchief like it was a kindness. It wasn't. The girl left the next morning. Daisy got her room. You keep your eyes open, always. The girls talk sweet when the customers are watching, linking arms, calling each other darling and sugar. But as soon as the men are gone, the edges come out. Dresses go missing. Perfume gets switched for vinegar. Pins appear in corsets where no pins should be. And the worst part? Most of it happens with a smile. Still, there's a strange kind of love buried in the rivalry. You've seen girls fight like cats one minute and patch each other up the next. Ruby once slapped Frenchie across the face over a poker player, then stayed up all night nursing her through a fever. You and Daisy haven't spoken since the hem incident, but last week she slid you a bit of coin under the table when you came up short for a doctor's visit. "Don't make it weird," she said. "It's just business." You find yourself constantly measuring. Who's above you, who's slipping, who's worth aligning with. It's a social ladder built on stilettos and guesswork. The girls who climb to the top get privileges. The madam gives them first pick of the new dresses, first shot at the high-rolling customers, and protection when things get messy. The girls who fall behind, they get replaced. Quietly, efficiently. You don't even hear the door slam shut. There was one girl, Annabelle, who used to run the floor. Smart, sharp-tongued, quick with a wink. She raked in more tips in one night than most did in a week. Then one day she just unravelled. No one knows what happened. Maybe a broken heart. Maybe a broken mind. She started forgetting her lines, arriving late, snapping at customers. One night she screamed in the middle of a song, tore off her necklace, and ran barefoot into the alley. She never came back. Her room was cleared out by morning. Daisy moved in before the sheets cooled. You learn not to get too close. Friendships in a saloon are like loose teeth, bound to fall out when the pressure gets too high. Still, late at night, after the customers leave and the lanterns go dim, the girls gather in the dressing room to peel off their glamour and talk like real people. They sit in their slips and stockings, legs crossed, hair undone, and tell stories, mostly lies, but beautiful ones. Stories about the homes they left, the men they almost loved, the futures they still pretend are waiting. Frenchie says she's saving up to open a theatre. Daisy wants a little house near the water. Ruby dreams of a horse farm. You say you'll open a flower shop and everyone rolls their eyes. Always with the damn flowers, someone mutters. But they smile, because deep down, every girl here needs one impossible dream to keep her sane. One historical fact. Rivalries between saloon girls were common and often fierce, especially in establishments where competition for tips and high-paying customers dictated survival. One quirky fact, in some saloons, girls ranked in an unofficial hierarchy. The queen of the saloon might have a private dressing room, exclusive access to the piano man, and veto power over song choices. One debate. Scholars argue whether the competition between women in these environments was created by the system or a natural byproduct of limited resources and unstable positions. That night you catch Frenchie watching you across the room. She lifts a brow, sips her drink and gives you the tiniest of nods. You nod back. Not quite friendship. Not quite war. Just acknowledgement. You're still here. You're still standing. And in this place that's enough to earn a flicker of respect. After your shift, you sit with Ruby on the back steps and pass a flask between you. The stars are out, and the town is finally quiet. She leans her head on your shoulder without a word, and you let her. In this life, sometimes your enemies are your only comfort. The rules aren't written down anywhere official, not in a handbook, not nailed to the wall. They're passed down, whispered, memorised through bruises and slip-ups, drilled into you by the madam and reinforced by the sideways glances of the girls who've been here longer. You break one, even by accident, and you'll feel it. Maybe not right away, but you will. The madam is the enforcer, the judge, the keeper of order. She's not what people think. She doesn't swan around in feathers or sip absinthe in a fainting chair. She's lean, sharp, and no nonsense. Hair always in a tight bun, voice like cracked leather. Her name's Maeve, though most just call her Miss M. She wears black almost exclusively. Not out of mourning, you suspect, but because it hides stains and broadcasts authority. Miss M runs the red feather like a battlefield general. Everyone answers to her, from the bartender to the piano man to the bouncer built like a freight horse. She has the books memorised, the girls' shifts tracked in her head, and a sixth sense for drama. Step out of line and she's there before you've even realised you stumbled. Rule 1. Never touch another girl's man. Man here meaning regular customer, high roller, or anyone who tips with gold and lingers too long. If Frenchie's got someone hooked, he's off limits. If Daisy's been feeding a drunk fantasy about running off together, don't mess with it. Girls have been fired for less than a misplaced flirt. Rule 2. No stealing. From the till, from the madam, from each other. Theft is the one sin Maeve won't forgive. She catches you with someone's perfume, someone's corset, even a hairpin. You're gone. Doesn't matter how sweet your smile or how much whiskey you sell. Out the door, no second chances. Rule 3, stay pretty. That sounds cruel, and it is, but it's part of the trade. You're expected to show up clean, painted, hair curled, and corset laced. The customers come to dream, not to see reality. Miss M doesn't care if your dog died or your ribs ache or you haven't eaten in 2 days. If you can't stand up and smile, she says, you can't stay here. You've seen girls try to work with fevers, with sprained ankles, with bruises hidden under petticoats. The job doesn't allow a weakness. Rule 4. Don't drink with the customers unless you can handle it. This one's less in force but equally dangerous. You lose control, you lose face. And when you lose face, the men stop paying. You're here to keep them drunk and spending, not to become one of them. There are unwritten rules too, like don't talk about home, don't cry where anyone can see you, don't leave your money out, don't tell the truth unless it benefits you. And for God's sake, don't fall in love with a customer. That one's carved into your soul like scripture. Miss M doesn't run the saloon with affection, she runs it with efficiency, but she's not heartless. When one of the girls gets sick, she calls for the doctor herself. When a man steps too far out of line, she orders Tree to handle it, and he does without blinking. She's protected you more than once, even if she doesn't make a show of it. One time a drunk followed you up the stairs and wouldn't take no for an answer. You managed to shove him away and scream. Maeve was there in seconds. She didn't say a word, just pulled out a blackjack from her apron pocket and cracked the man across the jaw. Then she told you to change your dress and get back to work. He was gone by morning. Respect in this place is earned in strange ways. Some girls hate her. Say she's cold, manipulative, just another cog in the machine. Maybe she is, but you don't forget that she was once like you. There's a photograph on her desk, faded, tucked behind a broken perfume bottle. A younger Maeve in a satin dress, smiling too wide, surrounded by girls who aren't here anymore. Every once in a while you catch her staring at it, her mouth pulled tight. Maybe she misses them, maybe she doesn't, but she remembers, that much is obvious. And then there are the punishments. They are not always violent, sometimes they're subtle. You show up late, your best table goes to someone else. You mouth off to the wrong customer, your dress mysteriously disappears from the dressing room. You don't earn your keep. You get stuck cleaning the spittoons at sunrise. Public humiliation is the real weapon here. It stings worse than any slap. But if you play by the rules, or close enough to fake it, Maeve treats you fair. She keeps a ledger of who owes what, dresses loaned, broken glasses, doctor fees, and she never adds a dime more than she should. You've checked. Twice. She even gives bonuses during holidays, like clockwork. A coin here, a new ribbon there, enough to keep hope alive without giving anyone ideas of leaving. One historical fact. Many saloon girls worked under strict rules enforced by madams or managers who controlled every aspect of their professional and personal lives, including curfews, earnings, and behaviour on and off the floor. One quirky fact, some madams were known to carry ledgers that listed not only debts and earnings, but also notes about girls' strengths, weaknesses, and reliability in the crisis, like human Yelp reviews. One debate. Historians are split on whether madams were maternal protectors of vulnerable women or shrewd business owners exploiting their labour under a glossy pretense of care. Tonight, as you lace up your boots and tie on your choker, you glance at the door to Maeve's office. It's closed as usual, but you swear you see movement behind the frosted glass, her silhouette, watching. You nod to yourself, adjust your bodice and step onto the floor. The rules haven't changed, and neither have you, not yet. There's a knock at your door just after sunset, the kind that makes you pause with one boot half laced and your fingers sticky from hair pomade. Not the madam's knock. Hers is sharp, purposeful. Not Ruby's either. She never knocks. No, this is tentative. Like someone unsure they even belong on this side of the hallway. You open the door cautiously, your foot behind it just in case, and find a man holding a half-crushed bouquet of prairie flowers. "Evening," he says, looking anywhere but your face. "I was wondering if you'd walk with me." It's not the first time. Every few weeks one of them gets ideas. Sometimes they bring gifts, candy, a pocket mirror, a scarf that smells like pipe smoke. They all want to believe they're different, that you'll see something in them worth stepping away from the piano and into the sunset. It's the great Western fantasy. You're the dusty town's golden girl, and they're going to be the one to save you. As if that's all you're waiting for. As if you haven't saved yourself a dozen times this month already. This one's name is Henry. A blacksmith maybe, or a wheelwright. You've served him drinks a handful of times, danced with him once or twice, polite, gentle, doesn't leer like most of them. You like him in a distant sort of way, the way you like a cool breeze or a warm biscuit. Comforting, but not something you count on. You accept the flowers with a nod and say you'll think about the walk. He leaves with a hopeful smile and a tip of his hat, and you shut the door softly behind him. Then you toss the bouquet into a vase already crowded with similar offerings, all wilted and leaning in on each other like they've given up. The flowers come and go, the men do too. What lingers is the way they look at you, like they've made up a story in their head and cast you as the leading lady. Love, here, is a performance. The girls know it and most of the men suspect it, but that doesn't stop either party from playing along. Customers come in convinced they're in a real romance. They ask your favourite colour. They talk about their mothers. They tell you about the homesteads they're building, the land they've cleared, the houses they plan to fill. "I could use a woman like you," they say, like it's a compliment. Like being used is the dream. You've been proposed to 3 times. Once by a gambler with bad teeth and a gold watch. Once by a cowboy who smelled like goats. And once by a schoolteacher from Missouri who said he had read the Bible every night if you just agreed to wear long skirts and quit the saloon. You said no to all of them, gently but firmly. You've seen the girls who say yes. Most don't end up better off. Some come crawling back after the man drinks away their savings or leaves them with 2 kids and a cough. Others disappear entirely, their names scratched off the madam's ledger like they never existed. But it's not all bad. Sometimes there's tenderness in the lies. A man will stroke your hand and talk to you like you're the only soul in the world who understands him. He'll buy you a drink, tuck a flower behind your ear, promise to come back next week. And sometimes he does. You let yourself believe it matters, just for the length of a song. Then there are the dangerous ones. Not all customers want love. Some want ownership. They smile sweet and speak soft. But their eyes say mine. They grip too tight during dances. They linger too long in doorways. They ask questions they have no right to. One of them followed Ruby home last month. She showed up the next morning with her sleeve torn and a scratch down her neck. The madam paid the sheriff to scare the man off, but no charges were filed. Just a misunderstanding, he said. Ruby hasn't smiled the same since. You have a system now. If a man starts asking too many personal questions, you redirect. If he starts getting possessive, you switch tables. If he shows up every night, you tell the madam. And if he brings a ring, you prepare your best fake cry and say you're already married to a soldier who died heroically. It's enough to make most of them retreat with dignity and tact. One man, though, James, was different. He didn't talk much, didn't try to impress you, just listened. Brought you little things, licorice, a booklet of poems, a pair of gloves lined with rabbit fur. He never asked for anything, and that made him dangerous in a whole new way, because you started to believe he might mean it. You started thinking, maybe, this one's real. He was gone before winter. Left a note in the madam's office. No goodbye. The gloves are still in your drawer. 1. Historical fact. Romantic relationships between saloon girls and their customers were not uncommon, though most were short-lived and ended with the girl returning to work after the man left or ran out of money. One quirky fact. Some saloon girls created elaborate fake love letters from soldiers at war or Eastern beaux and read them aloud to ward off persistent suitors. One debate. Scholars still argue whether saloon girls were emotionally manipulated into romantic entanglements or whether they actively leveraged men's affections as a calculated survival tactic. Tonight, as you dance with a man who calls you sweetheart too early and holds you just a little too close, you smile through the performance. You know he'll be gone in a week, maybe a day. Maybe he'll come back with a ring and a fantasy. Either way, you'll still be here, corset laced, lips painted, dancing like you've never been kissed. And maybe you'll take that walk with Henry tomorrow, or maybe not. Depends on the weather. Depends on how many lies you're willing to live through before breakfast. It starts with a cough. A little thing, dry, persistent, harmless enough. You tell yourself it's from the smoke or maybe from yelling over the piano music too much. But it lingers, sneaking up your throat during dances, showing up when you're trying to sing. You sip water, chew licorice, smear a little camphor on your chest and carry on. But in the back of your mind you know better. Illness is the ghost that haunts every corner of the saloon. You learn quickly which sounds to worry about. The hollow cough that echoes too long. The sharp intake of breath, followed by silence. The moans behind a closed door that aren't about pleasure. No one talks about it openly. It's bad luck. But everyone's listening, watching, counting how many days a girl's been too tired to work, how long since she smiled without effort. Some get better, some don't. And when a girl doesn't, well, there's a room in the back, small, dark, near the kitchen, where the sound of knives and boiling water can drown out what happens inside. Maeve keeps it stocked with laudanum, washcloths, a chipped basin. You've helped there once, just once. A girl named Nora had come down with something fast and vicious. Fever so high she spoke in rhymes and cried for her mother, then her sister, then someone named Harold no one could place. You spent one night wiping her forehead, holding her hand while Maeve poured something bitter between her lips. She died at dawn. No funeral, no burial, just a cart out back covered with a blanket, and her name erased from the door by the time you went back upstairs. But sickness isn't the only fear. There's another you don't speak aloud. Syphilis. The great rot, some call it. It slips in quiet, spreads slow, and stays hidden until it chews your face apart. You've seen it. One man used to be a regular, came back from the mining camps with a bandana over half his face. When he took it off, you nearly dropped your tray. His nose was gone, mouth crumpled in like old leather. No one would serve him. He left and never returned. The girls who work upstairs have a different routine. They wash obsessively. Vinegar, carbolic soap, sometimes whiskey. One of them, Lillian, swears by a concoction of onions and garlic that she rubs inside her thighs. It burns, she says, but better that than your insides rotting. She's not wrong. There's also the whisper of the clap, gonorrhea. The word itself sounds like mockery, but the symptoms aren't funny. Burning, pain, sometimes worse. The doctor hands out mercury pills and mumbles something about abstinence like it's a real solution. Maeve pays him in trade, free drinks and sometimes favours. He's not exactly reliable, but he's all you've got. And then there's the nightmare you really don't talk about. Pregnancy. You miss a month, then another. Your stomach turns at the smell of frying eggs. You wake up sweating and can't lace your corset all the way anymore. And if that happens, you've got 3 choices, and none of them end happily. Option 1. You run. Find a boarding house, a midwife, maybe a relative you haven't spoken to since you left home. Hope they'll take you in, raise the child, change your name, disappear. Option 2. You stay, work until you start to show, and pray Maeve doesn't notice. But she will, she always does. No one wants to watch a swollen-bellied girl try to flirt over poker chips. She'll cut you loose the moment you stop selling the dream, and then what? Option 3. You see the woman who lives 2 streets over, behind the church with the broken bell. She doesn't advertise, but everyone knows. Girls go to her quietly late at night and come back empty and pale. Some don't come back at all. One girl, a new one, barely 16, made that 3rd choice. She bled for 3 days straight. You heard her crying through the walls. Maeve brought the doctor, but he arrived late and left fast. She was gone by the end of the week. Her things were burned in the alley behind the saloon. You sleep with one hand on your belly now, not because you're pregnant, not yet, but because the fear of it is heavier than the corset you wear every day. You've memorised your cycle like scripture. Every late period is a countdown. One night you hear Frenchie throwing up in the back room. Loud, messy. She blames it on bad oysters from a miner's lunch plate. But you know the truth. You saw her clutching her side yesterday. You saw Maeve slip her something in a paper packet. You don't ask. You never ask. But you make her tea and sit nearby while she groans into a pillow. That's as much kindness as you can risk. There's a doctor in town, De Fincher, who treats the girls when they're desperate. He's seen it all. Rashes, infections, broken ribs, bruises from men who didn't understand the word no. He doesn't judge, but he doesn't care either. He offers cures that sting more than the disease. He once stitched up a girl's hand using a fishhook and some whiskey. You're lucky, he said. Could have been your throat. One historical fact. Many saloon girls faced constant exposure to disease, especially sexually transmitted infections like syphilis and gonorrhea, with limited access to reliable medical care or preventative treatment. One quirky fact. Some women believed carrying a small sachet of garlic in their corset warded off illness. Part superstition, part very pungent wishful thinking. One debate. Scholars still wrestle with the question of agency, whether saloon girls made calculated decisions about health and survival, or if they were caught in a system that gave them no real choices at all. That night you lie awake longer than usual. The cough is back, scratching behind your ribs. You light a candle, sip water, count your breaths. The ceiling stares down at you unmoved. You wonder how many girls have looked at it and asked the same questions. You don't get answers, only mourning. You're halfway through a laugh when the sheriff walks in. And just like that, the temperature of the saloon drops 10 degrees. It's not because anyone here is particularly fond of the law. It's the opposite. His badge might say peacekeeper, but out here, the law is more like a mood. Changeable, selective, and usually 2 drinks behind. Sheriff Markham stands in the doorway with his boots caked in mud and his hat low over his eyes, like some grizzled caricature of virtue. He's tall, wide, and always smells like gun oil and damp wool. He doesn't speak at first, just scans the room with a slow, deliberate glance that lands on everyone and everything. The card players freeze mid-hand. The piano dies down. Even the laughter from the back corner fizzles into silence. Then his eyes find you. He doesn't say your name. He never does. But there's a nod. Not friendly, not threatening, just acknowledgement. You give him one in return, polite but distant. Because here's the truth, the sheriff might not be your enemy, but he's definitely not your friend. The best you can hope for is that he ignores you entirely. The worst is that he decides he's in the mood to enforce something tonight. Markham walks to the bar, leans against it like he owns the whole damn town, and orders his usual. Coffee, black, in a chipped mug he insists on using every time. Billy the bartender slides it over without a word. No one else orders coffee after dark except men who intend to stay very, very alert. You keep working, smile at a miner who smells like dirt and wet copper. Pour a drink, but your eyes keep drifting back to Markham. He's watching something or someone. You just don't know what yet. That's the problem with lawmen out here. They don't always wear white hats. Some are just thugs with paperwork. Others mean well but are stretched so thin they crack like bad glass. And then there are those, like Markham, who float in that grey zone, righteous when it suits them, blind when it's convenient. He's not the only authority you have to navigate. There are marshals too, federal, sometimes territorial, who roll through town with long coats and federal warrants and eyes that see too much. They don't ask questions so much as state facts. You've been questioned by one before. It started polite and then ended with a hand on your wrist and the kind of smile that makes your stomach crawl. Maeve intervened that time. She always has an instinct for when things are about to get legal. Then there are vigilantes, the self-appointed law. Usually ranchers or drunk ex-soldiers who think their gun belt grants them moral clarity. They show up with ropes and righteous fury whenever someone's caught cheating, stealing, or looking a little too foreign. Their justice is fast, messy, and public. You've watched them drag a man out by his heels once. Accused of something no one quite confirmed. He didn't come back. The saloon tries to stay on good terms with everyone. Maeve pays protection money, in coin and sometimes in favours. Free drinks for the sheriff. A quiet room upstairs for travelling lawmen. Occasional donations to the town's church fund or schoolhouse if the rumours of a crackdown start circling. It's all part of the unspoken arrangement. You let us keep the fantasy alive, and we'll pretend this is still a respectable town. But sometimes the illusion cracks. A few weeks back, a girl named Lydia came downstairs pale as a ghost, clutching her wrist. Said one of the deputies had grabbed her hard and made threats about jail time if she didn't entertain him for free. She tried to laugh it off, but everyone could see the bruise blooming on her arm. Maeve handled it quietly, sent a note, made a few promises. The deputy stopped showing up. No one asked what happened. Some things just resolve themselves. Tonight Markham finishes his coffee and doesn't cause trouble, but his presence is a reminder. You're not just dancing for minors and gamblers, you're dancing in front of the law too. And it's always watching, always judging, always deciding how much of you it'll tolerate before it decides you're too loud, too wild, too much. You've seen it happen. The girl gets too outspoken, too clever, starts quoting newspapers or reading too many books. Suddenly she's a nuisance. Next thing you know, she's arrested for public indecency or some fabricated nonsense. Usually, she's gone by morning. One historical fact. In many frontier towns, sheriffs and marshals held enormous power, often arbitrarily exercised, and were known to use saloons as both social hubs and sources of income or favours. One quirky fact, some saloons kept ledgers listing officer tabs, free drinks or discounted services for lawmen, essentially bribes recorded in cursive and liquor stains. One debate. Scholars differ on whether law enforcement officers in the Wild West maintained justice or simply managed chaos with a badge and a smirk. Later that night, Markham tips his hat and leaves without a word. The door swings shut behind him. The saloon breathes again. The music picks up. You go back to smiling. But for the rest of the night, you keep one eye on the door and the other on the back corner where he sat, just in case. Because in this place, the law doesn't come with a warning. It just walks in, orders coffee and waits. The saloon has two economies. One you can see, the clink of coins on the counter, the glass bottles lining the bar, the tips slipped into garters with a wink and a grin. That part's easy. It's loud and lit and just shady enough to make the men feel daring. But beneath it, beneath the music and the flirting and the watered-down whiskey, there's another system entirely. One where nothing is what it seems and everything has a price no one talks about. It starts with the bootleg whiskey. You think the bottles come from a supplier in Kansas City, maybe. That's what the madam says anyway. But one night you catch a glimpse of the real deal. You're heading through the kitchen to get ice when you spot two men lifting a barrel out of a trapdoor in the floor. It's stamped with a ranch brand and reeks of corn mash. They're pouring it into fancier bottles, labels from Tennessee and New Orleans, the good stuff. Or so the customers think. You don't say a word. You just nod and keep walking. That's rule number 1 in the secret economy. Don't get curious. The gambling's more obvious, of course. Cards clacks across tables all night. Coins change hands like they're contagious. But what most customers don't realise is that the house always wins, not by luck, but by design. The decks are marked. Not every game, but enough. One of the dealers, a wireman named Slim, has a way of flicking his wrist that shifts the odds every time. He gets a cut. The madam gets hers. And if someone loses too much and gets loud about it, Tree steps in. No one questions the results after that. Then there's the back room. It's not on any blueprint. No windows, one door, always guarded. You've only been in once, and even that felt like trespassing. Inside, shelves of fine liquor that never see the front bar, stacks of cigars in glass jars, crates stamped with shipping marks from Mexico and somewhere even farther. There's a strongbox bolted to the floor and a small table with a velvet cloth usually covered in ledgers and gold scales. You saw Maeve in there once with a man dressed too fine for this town. She looked up, saw you, and smiled without warmth. "Need more ice?" she asked. You nodded and backed out quickly. That's where the real money happens. Smuggling is part of it. You hear whispers about shipments coming in on wagons marked dry goods, bottles of absinthe, Spanish lace, maybe even opium tucked into sacks of flour. The saloon sits at a crossroads, a perfect hub for goods headed west where laws thin out and prices shoot up. People come here to drink, gamble and forget. They leave with a lot more than hangovers. And sometimes they leave people behind. Human trafficking isn't the term anyone uses, but you know it when you see it. A new girl shows up out of nowhere, doesn't speak English, follows Maeve around like a stray cat. She works the floor, keeps her head down, barely talks. Then one night she's gone. No goodbye, no trace. You ask Ruby about her, and she just shrugs. Not our business, as she says. She was borrowed. Probably got returned. It makes your stomach turn. Not everything's sinister, though. Some of it's just smart. Like the system the girls use to cover each other. Say you're short on rent one week. You pawn a necklace, and Maeve doesn't blink. Say a man gets too handsy. Ruby follows him out and smashes his kneecap with a poker. Frenchie sells cigars to passing travellers, ones she's lifted from the back room, and splits the profit with the piano man for keeping quiet. It's survival, not betrayal. Everyone has a hustle. You start your own. There's a farmer's boy who delivers eggs every Thursday. Young, soft-spoken, always red in the face. You charm him into bringing extra, then resell them to the boarding house down the street for twice the price. Nothing big, just enough to feel like you've got a little leverage. A little power. You stash the money in a loose brick behind the stove where no one but you knows to look. But the deeper you go, the more you realise the saloon's built on 1,000 quiet deals, all stacked like playing cards. You pull one out and the whole thing might fall, so you learn to work around the edges. Say just enough. Smile just right. Keep your hands clean, even when you know the floor beneath you is soaked in secrets. One night you overhear a conversation between Maeve and a railroad man. Something about land rights, development plans, who's being paid to keep certain routes closed. It's all numbers and names you don't recognise, but the money involved could buy out the entire town twice over. Maeve laughs softly. "They think I run a saloon," she says. "Isn't that charming?" One historical fact. Many Western saloons functioned as unofficial hubs of black market trade, including bootlegging, gambling rings and contraband trafficking, sometimes with law enforcement's quiet approval. One quirky fact, some saloons printed their own drink tokens that doubled as a form of local currency, which customers used not only for liquor, but to buy favour or secure future bets. One debate. Historians argue whether women like Maeve were criminal masterminds, or simply survivalists, using every tool available in a system designed to keep them broke and quiet. At the end of your shift, you pass by the back room again. The door's ajar. Inside, someone's counting stacks of paper money you've never seen before. Green, crisp, Eastern. You pause for just a second too long. A shadow moves. The door swings shut. Tiet. You keep walking. You don't ask questions, not in the real economy. You just dance, pour and smile, while the real deals happen in rooms you pretend not to notice. You think about leaving all the time. Not in a dramatic way, not with a suitcase packed and a tearful goodbye, more like a daydream you slip into between drinks and dances. A quiet morning where you just don't come back. You walk past the station, buy a ticket, and keep going until the landscape changes, until no one knows your name or what you used to do for a living. It sounds so easy, but out here, walking away from the saloon is like trying to leave a river mid-current. It doesn't let go easy, and the longer you've been in it, the harder it pulls. The idea usually starts when someone else tries it. A girl named Tess was the first you saw make a real go of it. Sweet, soft-spoken eyes like sugar glass. She didn't drink, didn't curse, and somehow kept her petticoats cleaner than everyone else's. She got herself wrapped up in a cattleman named Boyd. He wasn't rich, but he had land, real land, and he promised her a cottage near the river, chickens, maybe even a piano someday. She believed him. She packed a small bag, gave away her extra stockings, and left without saying goodbye. For a week you didn't hear a word. Then she was back, No bag, no shoes, just a bruise high on her cheekbone, and a look in her eyes like something inside had curled up and died. She wouldn't say what happened. Maeve let her back in, handed her address, and said nothing, or when asked. You all knew better. Not every escape attempt ends like that, but most don't end well. Sometimes the girl gets as far as the next town before she realises she doesn't have enough money for food or train fare. Sometimes the man who promised her a new life remembers how much cheaper it is to abandon someone than to support them. And sometimes, well, sometimes girls just vanish. No one knows where they go. Maybe they make it. Maybe they don't. You've had your chance too. A customer named Lowell offered to take you to San Francisco once. Said he had a sister who ran a boarding house and would give you work. Not like this, he said, gesturing vaguely to your corset and heels. Honest work. He brought you a map, a timetable, and half the fare in a wax paper envelope. You stared at it for a long time. Then you tore it up. You didn't believe him. Or maybe you did, but not enough. You've seen too many girls trust the wrong promises. And honestly, you didn't know who you'd be without the saloon. It's easy to think you'll just become someone new. A teacher, a baker, someone who walks upright during daylight. But what if you don't know how anymore? Still, the fantasy sticks. You think about it every time someone plays a certain piano tune, light, drifting, like a breeze. You imagine that same melody playing as you step onto a train, hair loose, bag in hand. Maybe you've got a hat box, maybe you're crying, maybe not. It doesn't matter. In that moment, you're free. But then you look around, at the other girls laughing too loud, at the man puking behind the piano, at Maeve counting bills with a look like iron across her face, and you realise how tangled you are in this place. It's not just the job, it's the routine, the knowledge of how to survive here. You know which boots to wear when it rains. You know which customers tip well and which ones are all talk. You know where to hide your money, who to avoid, how to smile even when your teeth ache. That's worth something. Still, some do get out. There was a girl, June, who worked here before your time. They say she used her tips to buy a boarding house across the county line. Now she runs it herself. No men allowed upstairs, clean sheets, hot food. They say she hires only girls who want out of the life. You don't know if it's true. Might be a myth Maeve lets circulate to give you all something to hope for. But sometimes when you're counting coins late at night, you think about what kind of lock June might have on her front door and what it would feel like to turn that key. One historical fact. Many saloon girls attempted to leave the trade by marrying, saving for a business, or relocating to towns where their past was less likely to follow them. But few succeeded without support or protection. One quirky fact, in some frontier towns, girls who left the saloon life would pay for classified ads in distant city newspapers, coded messages to long-lost family or new suitors, hoping to reinvent themselves. One debate. Scholars argue whether the high turnover of saloon girls was due to burnout, personal choice, or external pressures from violence, disease, or a lack of long-term opportunity. One night, Ruby tells you she's thinking of leaving. She says it low, careful, over a plate of cold chicken and day-old biscuits in the back kitchen. I've been saving, she says. Got near $40 stashed. I know a man in Denver. You nod and pretend to be happy for her. She deserves it. But inside, you wonder how many more weeks she has before the saloon pulls her back. Later, alone in your room, you open the loose floorboard and count your own savings. You don't touch it, just look. You trace the edges of the worn bills, run your thumb over a small brass key that opens nothing yet, and you whisper to yourself, not a prayer, not quite a promise. Someday. The night Wild Bill Hickok walks into your saloon, the room changes, not just in sound or motion, but in weight. Like the air thickens around him. You hear the door swing open, a gust of desert wind with it, and the silence rolls in right behind. Even the piano man stops mid-chord, fingers hovering above the keys. You don't need to turn around to know who it is. You feel him before you see him. He's got that walk, slow, heavy-heeled, like he's dragging a legend behind him, tall, lean, and long hair brushed back beneath a worn black hat. A frock coat that could have been stolen off a preacher or a corpse, 2 pistols, one on each hip. He doesn't speak as he crosses the floor. He doesn't need to. The room parts around him like he's the eye of some storm you're not sure is over, or just about to begin. You watch from the far side of the bar, holding a tray with 3 full glasses and suddenly not one damn nerve left in your body. Not because he's dangerous, though he is, but because this man doesn't belong to the usual mess of cowhands and gamblers. He's a piece of Western myth walking through your front door, and you don't know what it means for your night, but you know it's not going to be quiet. The madam appears from nowhere. Of course she does. Maeve has a radar for this kind of thing. Her dress is cleaner than usual. She glides up like she's been preparing for this moment all week. "Mr. Hickok," she purrs, like they're old friends. Maybe they are. Gives her a tight nod, sets his hat on the bar, and orders a whiskey. No water, no glass. Just the bottle. He doesn't look your way at first. Oh, that would be too easy. Instead, he leans against the bar like he's been here 100 times, even though you know for a fact he hasn't. He drinks slow, eyes flicking across the room. You hear someone whisper something about Deadwood. Another mutters 50 men, easy. There's a rustling at the poker table. Everyone suddenly remembers their manners. Finally, his eyes find you. You're not ready. He doesn't leer, doesn't smile, just watches, calm and unreadable, like he's assessing whether you're a detail worth remembering. You blink, force a smile, and walk over, hips swaying like the room hasn't just turned itself inside out. "Welcome to the Red Feather," you say, voice soft and low. "You here to drink or cause a scene?" His mouth twitches, maybe a smile, maybe just a muscle spasm. "Little of both," he replies. And that's how it starts. You pour his next round yourself. He doesn't ask you your name, which you appreciate. He asks for a quiet table near the back. You slide into the chair across from him because Maeve signals you to do so with a look that says, "Be nice, but don't get attached." You've seen this look before, usually when she wants someone handled without making it obvious. Turns out Wild Bill is polite, dry-humoured. He talks about the dust on the trail, the smell of death in small towns, the way most gunfighters die not from duels but from a bottle and a mistake. You laugh more than you mean to, he notices. His eyes are tired but sharp, like he's always half expecting someone to shoot him from behind, even while complimenting your perfume. You dance later that night, and he watches, doesn't join in, just sips and watches. Other men try to approach him, challenge him, nudge the legend to see if it bites. He ignores them. One gets too close, slaps your behind as you pass. Bill stands, smooth as Saul. And that alone is enough. The man backs off. No words. Just the weight of reputation doing its job. He doesn't stay long, maybe 2 hours. Enough for 3 drinks, a game of poker he wins without blinking, and a short story about Calamity Jane that you're pretty sure is only half true. As he gets up to leave, he turns to you and says, "If you're still here in a year, I'll be surprised." You're not sure if it's a compliment or a warning. After he's gone, the whole room exhales, like everyone was holding their breath just in case someone said the wrong thing. The poker resumes. The piano picks up again, livelier now. Someone claps you on the back and says, "Well, look at you, sweet on a legend." You laugh it off, but your heart's still thudding like a war drum. That night, the saloon hums with gossip. The girls gather in the dressing room and pick apart every word he said, every glance. Frenchie claims he winked at her. Daisy insists she once served him in Santa Fe, though nobody believes her. Maeve says nothing, just counts her money. One historical fact. Wild Bill Hickok was a real lawman and gunfighter, known for his fast draw and unpredictable temper. His reputation preceded him wherever he went, and saloons often quieted upon his entrance out of sheer nerves. One quirky fact. Hickok was nearly blind in his later years and often wore his pistols reversed for a faster cross-draw, but few dared to test how fast he really was. One debate. Historians question whether Hickok's legend was based on truth or exaggerated by dime novels and his own talent for self-mythology. Was he a hero, or just very good at branding? In your room that night, you sit at the edge of the bed and replay his words. "I'll be surprised." You whisper them like a riddle. Are you supposed to leave? Stay? Did he see something in you you've missed? You reach into your hiding place behind the floorboard and count your cash again. Not for any reason, just to remind yourself you still can. Because legends walk in and out of saloons all the time. But the girls, you stay until the saloon forgets your name, or until you find the nerve to make someone remember it. You wake to the sound of pickaxes clanging in the distance, faint at first, like a memory, then growing louder as more men pour into town chasing the newest lie, dressed up as gold. It started 2 weeks ago, a rumour floating in on the boots of a gambler who claimed he'd seen colour in the riverbed north of town. He swaggered into the Red Feather with gold dust on his fingers and a story sticky with exaggeration. Most folks didn't believe him, but that didn't matter. What mattered was that he'd said it, and now the town is transforming faster than your corset laces in the hands of a drunk with bad intentions. By the end of the week, the roads are jammed with wagons, mules, and hungry-eyed men with shovels tied to their backs like weapons. Tents spring up behind the saloon, clustering like mushrooms after a storm. The general store doubles its prices. The bathhouse runs out of soap. The boarding house installs a second row of bunks and still has a wait list. And the red feather? The red feather explodes. Your evenings start before the sun goes down now, and they don't end until it rises again. The air inside the saloon is thicker, hotter, rank with unwashed bodies, and the stink of false hope. Every table is full, the bar is 3 deep in shouting, reaching hands. The piano man plays non-stop, his fingers blistered, a rag tied around his wrist to soak up the blood. The music never stops, neither do you. The miners aren't like the regulars. They don't want polite conversation or the illusion of romance. They want noise, flash, something to fill the gaping hole where a life used to be. Most haven't slept in days. Some don't plan to. They live on jerky, adrenaline, and the fantasy that any day now they'll hit a vein so itch they'll never have to work again. You've learned to spot the ones who've struck something real. They don't shout, they don't spend flashy. They come in quiet, order whiskey without looking up, and slip silver coins across the bar like they're handing over secrets. Then there are the ones who want to look rich. They gamble hard, tip bigger, toss nuggets on the table and buy rounds for strangers they'll never see again. They're dangerous in a different way. Wild, unpredictable, desperate to show off. You dance with one who smells like dynamite and moonshine. He lifts you into the air mid-spin and nearly drops you on your spine. You laugh it off, but later, when he grabs your wrist too tight and asks if you'd marry a rich man who lives in a tent, you don't answer. You just twist free and vanish into the crowd. Maeve hires 3 new girls by the end of the week. 1 from Carson City, 2 from down south. None of them lasts more than a month. 1 cries after her first shift. Another disappears before payday. The 3rd gets knocked out cold during a bar fight she wasn't even in. You help drag her upstairs, nose bleeding, dress torn. She doesn't come back. And the fights. Lord, the fights. They start over everything. Cards, women, spilled drinks, loud music, too much silence. The red feather replaces 5 chairs a night. The mirror behind the bar is shattered again. Billy the bartender breaks a bottle over someone's head before breakfast. Tree, the bouncer, doesn't sleep. Just drinks coffee with bourbon in it and lifts men like sacks of potatoes when things go sideways. The local undertaker swings by twice in a single week. He tips you a coin and says, "You gals keep me in business." But underneath the chaos, you start to feel something stranger. Fear. Not yours. Theirs. The miners are terrified. Not just of failure, though that's part of it, but of being forgotten. They're racing the clock. They know the gold will run out, the luck will fade, the town will dry up like every other. They come into the saloon like it's a last meal, spending everything they have to feel like kings for just one more night. And you become part of the ceremony. A priestess in fishnet stockings, blessing their desperation with a smile and a drink. One night, a young man, barely out of boyhood, sits at your table. He tells you he hasn't slept in 4 days, says he's close, can feel it, shows you his hands, cracked and bleeding from rock and frost. "1 more week," he says, eyes wild. "Just 1 more, then I'll buy you something pretty." You don't laugh, you just touch his hand and say, "You already did," and he smiles like you've handed him a gold nugget bigger than his fist. One historical fact, gold rushes, especially in the American West, brought sudden surges of population and wealth, followed by equally fast economic crashes that often devastated boomtowns. One quirky fact, some saloons offered gold dust tabs, where miners paid with pinches of raw gold kept in tiny vials around their necks. Bartenders learned to judge value by weight and colour alone. One debate. Historians disagree on whether the presence of saloon girls during gold rushes gave women a unique kind of social mobility, or simply made them more disposable during economic busts. At night, the floor vibrates beneath your feet from dancing and stomping boots. Your pockets are heavy with coins, but your soul feels light as ash. You crawl into bed with bruises you don't remember earning. The sound of pickaxes keeps going, even in your dreams. They're all digging for something. Gold, glory, escape. You're digging too, just in a different direction. You start sleeping in your boots, not by choice, not as some bold fashion statement, but because you're tired of waking up to sirens in your blood and no time to lace up. It happens once, then twice, then often enough to call it routine. The first time is during a thunderstorm that never shows up on the horizon. You're asleep in your room, dreaming of nothing at all. when a gunshot tears through the walls like a shout from the devil himself. You roll off the bed so fast your ribs bang the floorboards, and by the time you stagger upright, you hear the crackle. Fire. It's the second floor. Someone left a lantern too close to a velvet curtain. Maybe they passed out drunk, maybe they did it on purpose, does not matter. Smoke rolls in like a black tide, licking at the hallways and curling beneath doors. You grab your coat, your money stash, your pistol. You don't even have time to check if your hair's pinned right. Outside, the street's full of yelling. Someone's trying to form a bucket line. Maeve's at the window shouting orders, red-faced and barefoot. Frenchie's dragging a chest of dresses into the alley, like it contains gold bars. You see Ruby holding a girl you barely know, both of them laughing, tears streaking their soot-stained cheeks. In the end, only part of the upstairs burns. The saloon survives, mostly because the bar and the piano are downstairs, and no one in their right mind wants to rebuild either. But 2 rooms are lost. You smell smoke for weeks afterward, even after Maeve has the walls whitewashed and the glass replaced. You still see it sometimes when you close your eyes. That's the thing about the Red Feather, it's always teetering on the edge of disaster. Another night it's a brawl, one that starts with a spilled drink and ends with 3 men bleeding on the floor and a 4th missing part of his ear. It takes Tree, Billy and 2 miners to break it up. Someone crashes through a window and limps away with the glass still stuck in his thigh. The piano man never stops playing. Faster songs calm them down, he mutters, eyes on the keys. You believe him. And the shootouts, always the shootouts. Sometimes it's personal, someone cheating at cards, someone flirting with the wrong woman. Other times it feels like chaos for chaos' sake, like the men come in loaded for war and just need an excuse to draw. You learn to hit the ground without thinking. You don't scream. Screaming makes you sound like a target. You crawl under tables, behind barrels, into the back hallway where the walls are thicker. You once saw a man take a bullet in the thigh and keep gambling. Didn't even flinch until the whiskey wore off. Another time someone tried to rob the till in broad daylight. He didn't make it out. Maeve shot him herself, through the lace curtain of her office. Didn't even set her drink down. The blood was mopped up by the end of the hour. The poker game resumed like nothing happened. That's how it goes. Disasters happen, and then you go back to work. You wonder sometimes what keeps the place standing. It's like the saloon is alive, too mean to die, too stubborn to fall. A beast made of floorboards and sweat, patched with the memories of women like you. You remember every crack in the wood, every spot where the ceiling leaks, every window that sticks in the frame. You know this place better than you know your own reflection. After the fire, you move rooms. Your new one is smaller but quieter, tucked in a corner away from the staircase. You nail your money stash to the inside of the dresser. You keep your derringer in a drawer with a hairbrush and a tin of rouge. You sleep with your coat draped over your feet, and you keep a wet rag near the basin, just in case the smoke comes again. One night there's an earthquake, not a big one, but enough to rattle bottles off the shelves and make everyone stagger like they've had 1 drink too many. The saloon creaks and groans. You brace against a doorframe and think, if this building collapses, at least it'll take all our secrets with it. Then the shaking stops, the candles are relit, and someone makes a joke about God trying to shuffle the poker deck. You go back to dancing like nothing happened. One historical fact. Fires were devastatingly common in frontier towns due to wooden structures, open flames, and alcohol-fueled carelessness. Many saloons burned down multiple times before being rebuilt, if they were rebuilt at all. One quirky fact. Some saloon girls carried small fire kits hidden in their petticoat pockets. Compact bundles with a change of stockings, a little cash, and a spare comb, ready to grab in case they had to run. One debate. Scholars question whether the frequent disasters in boomtowns made women more resourceful survivors, or merely deeper casualties of the Wild West's unpredictable violence. After one particularly rough night, you sit on the back steps with Ruby, both of you covered in soot and grime. You're silent for a long time. Then she says, "You think we'll live through this?" You glance up at the stars, distant and smug, and say, "Probably not." She laughs. You do too, because it's funny, and because you might be right. But the next night you're back on the floor in a borrowed dress, hair pinned, boots laced. The music's playing, the drinks are flowing, and the saloon, stubborn old thing that it is, has survived again. So you do too. It begins with a whisper. Not the usual gossip about who passed out in whose bed or what the madam might really be doing with the banker's ledger in her desk drawer. No, this one's quieter, sharper. You hear it while fixing your stockings in the dressing room. Ruby's whispering to Frenchie, who's whispering back without moving her lips. They're speaking fast and low, pausing only when someone enters. The words are like sparks, books, newspapers, votes for women, and something about a meeting. You're intrigued, but you know better than to ask outright. Not until you know what you're stepping into. Around here, curiosity doesn't kill the cat, it drags her outside and leaves her for the buzzards. But over the next few nights, the whispers multiply. You notice Ruby slipping pages into her corset, crumpled, smoothed, reread. You spot Daisy reading by lamplight behind the bar before her shift, her face lit with something more than firelight. Then one evening, Frenchie slips a folded paper into your hand when no one's looking. No words, just a glance sharp as a needle. You wait until you're back in your room to open it. It's a pamphlet, torn, water-stained, printed in small impatient letters. It reads, "The Voice of the Women of the West." There's no author listed, just pages and pages of questions. Why do women not vote? Why do men decide our wages, our fates, our lives? Why are we called immoral for working, but men not shamed for buying us? It doesn't feel like propaganda, it feels like a slap. You read it 3 times before hiding it under your pillow, and you start to notice things. How the saloon's rules don't come from town hall, how the sheriff only arrests women when they're loud or inconvenient, how the men who drink away their children's food money never face judgment, while you get called a whore for dancing in a corset you didn't even choose. You're not angry, not yet, but you're waking up. A few nights later, Ruby invites you on a walk. She leads you through a side alley behind the Red Feather, past the livery, down to the old dry goods shop that burned out last spring. It's boarded up, supposedly abandoned, but there's a candle flickering behind the side window. She knocks twice, then 3 more times in a rhythm that feels like a secret handshake. Inside are 6 women. 2 you recognise. The others look like school teachers, seamstresses, maybe a laundress. There's a crate turned into a table, and around it stacks of books, letters, more pamphlets. One woman stands to speak, her dress modest, her voice steady. She talks about the suffrage movement, about forming a reading circle, about getting a petition into the hands of the territorial governor. They don't care what we want, she says, so we'll teach each other to care. You don't say much that night. Just listen, but when you leave, your mind is louder than it's ever been. Back at the saloon, the world resumes its shape. Men talk over you, tip you to stay quiet, laugh too hard when you say anything smart. But now you notice, and so do the girls. Frenchie starts quoting poetry. Daisy tells a customer she's been learning Latin, just to watch his face twitch. You slip the pamphlet into another girl's room when no one's watching. The next week, she joins the walk to the dry goods shop. Of course Maeve knows. Maeve always knows. One night she corners you behind the bar. Her voice is low, but her eyes are lit with something dangerous. "Don't get clever," she says. "This town eats clever girls." You ask her if she used to be one. She doesn't answer. Just walks away, heels sharp against the floorboards. And maybe you should stop, but you don't. You hide books in your petticoat. You lend your ear to whispered plans. You learn about women's journals being passed hand to hand from New York to San Francisco. You hear about a woman in Wyoming who voted. Legally. You feel something rise in your chest that isn't rebellion exactly, but it's nearby, like a fire just beneath your ribs. One night, a customer asks what you'd do if you weren't doing this. You smile and say, "Teach men to sit down and listen." He laughs too loud and doesn't tip. That's fine. You're learning to want things that don't glitter. One historical fact. Western territories, including Wyoming and Utah, were among the first to grant women the right to vote in the late 19th century, partly as a strategy to attract settlers and normalise communities. One quirky fact, reading clubs for women were often used as a cover for organising political and social reform, books by day, revolution by candlelight. One debate. Historians still argue whether saloon girls were part of early feminist movements or simply adjacent to them, empowered in daily survival but disconnected from broader activism. A month later, the dry goods building is raided. No one says by who, no one claims responsibility, but the books are gone, the pamphlets scattered. One of the school teachers disappears. Ruby has a bruise on her jaw she won't talk about. Frenchie doesn't dance for 3 nights. You bury your copy of the pamphlet in a tin under the floorboard, beneath your money and pistol. You think about throwing it away, but you don't. You keep it like a relic A fragile reminder that something stirred once. The meetings stop, but the thinking doesn't. And now, when you smile at customers, it's different. You're not sweet. You're watching, calculating, listening to every assumption they carry like a backpack of stones. Because one day, maybe not soon, maybe not even here, you'll use it all. Knowledge isn't armour here, it's gunpowder. You're just waiting for the match. Some nights the piano goes quiet all on its own. Not from silence, but from something older and stranger moving through the saloon. The air shifts, the laughter fades, and even though the music might still technically be playing, it feels like the walls are holding their breath. That's when the stories come out. Not the kind customers tell you while drunk and swaying, spinning tales about lost gold and near duels and secret rendezvous in faraway towns. No, these are different. These stories never get told above a whisper. They're passed between girls, mostly after closing, when the lanterns are low and the dust hangs still in the air, like suspended time. You're sitting with Ruby and Frenchie behind the bar one such night, nursing lukewarm tea and peeling off your stockings like they owe you money. It's quiet. No one left but Billy mopping and Maeve locked in her office, probably counting sins and coins. You're all tired, the kind of tired that sits in your marrow and doesn't care about sleep. That's when Frenchie speaks up, voice soft. You ever seen the Mirror Girl? You glance at her, thinking it's a joke, but her face says different. She's only there after closing, she goes on. The long mirror at the end of the upstairs hall, the one with the crack in the corner. I saw her last winter. Looked just like me, only she didn't blink when I did. You laugh, but it comes out forced. Ruby just stares at her tea. Turns out the Red Feather has a reputation, not just as a place for drinks and dancing, but as one of those places. The kind with history that doesn't stay buried. Ask around and someone always has a story, a piano playing on its own. Footsteps upstairs when the rooms are empty, cold spots, whispers. One girl swears she heard crying behind the pantry door, but when she opened it, nothing was there but a broom and a box of chipped glasses. You didn't believe in ghosts when you got here. Still don't, officially. But there's a chill in the hallway near your new room that never warms, no matter the season. And once, while brushing your hair, you saw a shape move in the mirror behind you. Not a person, just a shadow that didn't belong. Maeve doesn't like when the girls talk about it. Superstition makes bad workers, she says. But even she won't go into the cellar after dark, says it's because of rats, but Billy let it slip once that a girl died down there. No name and no funeral, just one of the upstairs girls from years ago who never came back down. And then there's the painting. It hangs in the back hallway, just past the kitchen, a portrait of a woman in a blue dress, mouth pursed like she's keeping secrets. No one knows who she is. The frame's too nice for the setting, too heavy, the glass too clean. Sometimes when you walk by you feel like she's looking at you differently than she did the night before. Ruby swears the tilt of her head changes. Daisy once covered it with a towel for luck. The towel was gone the next morning. One night the piano man Silas tells a story while drunk enough to forget his usual silence. Says he used to play in a mining town saloon that collapsed into the ground one night, swallowed whole during a poker game. Says he was only spared because he was in the outhouse. Laughs like it's funny. Then he sobers and says, "The dead don't care about your music, they just like to hear the walls talk." You hear a lot of things in a place like this, girls giggling when no one's there. The sound of dancing shoes in the empty hallway. Once, you swear you heard your name spoken behind your ear when no one was in the room. You turned so fast you spilled your water. The air behind you was cold. You didn't sleep that night. One of the new girls, Josie, lasted only 4 nights. Said she felt someone watching her from the foot of the bed. Said she woke up once with the blankets tucked around her so tight she couldn't move. Thought maybe it was a joke, until she saw the scratches on the inside of the mirror. They didn't match her fingernails. She left at sunrise, didn't even take her shoes. One historical fact. Many old western saloons were rumoured to be haunted, often built on burial grounds, mining tunnels or sites of violence, plenty of which had never been properly recorded or buried with dignity. One quirky fact. Some saloon girls wore small amulets or charms sewn into their corsets to ward off spirits. Beads, feathers, bone fragments, even bits of coloured glass, handed down from one girl to the next. One debate. Historians still question whether ghost stories in frontier towns were signs of genuine belief or coping mechanisms for women facing daily trauma, isolation and loss. The truth is, you don't need ghosts to make this place feel haunted. It already is. by choices, by losses, by the dreams girls leave behind like shed skin. You've passed rooms where laughter used to echo, and now only dust lives. You've watched new girls arrive with stars in their eyes and vanish before anyone learns their real name. The past doesn't leave here, it lingers. Still, you start placing a glass of water by your bed at night, not for drinking, just in case, and when you walk past the cracked mirror in the hallway, you glance sideways quickly, just to check. You don't talk about babies at the Red Feather, not in full sentences, not unless you're whispering with the door shut and the lamp turned down low. The subject is wrapped in layers of silence, like the petticoats you wear under your dress, meant to stay hidden, tidy, and controlled. Still, the stories find their way into the cracks. A glance across the room, a sudden absence. The girl sitting too still with a hand pressed quietly to her stomach. The truth is, some girls become mothers, and some girls stop being ones before they ever start. You first notice it with Lottie. She's young, barely out of girlhood, soft-faced and timid, with a laugh that always sounds like she's asking for permission. One night she turns down 3 customers in a row, says she's got a headache. By the next week she's working slower, dancing less. She doesn't eat during supper, just pushes her food around with her fork and excuses herself early. Ruby sees it first, Maeve sees it second, you see it third, and by then it's impossible to ignore. One morning Lottie doesn't come downstairs. By nightfall Maeve brings the doctor in through the back alley. You peek down the hallway just in time to see the door shut behind him. He stays there for hours. When he finally leaves, his sleeves are stained, his face pale. Maeve walks him out with a coin pouch in hand and that expression she gets when she's bearing something she can't afford to let surface. Lottie doesn't come back. Her room is cleared out before sunrise. Someone else moves in 2 days later, never asking what happened. You want to ask? You don't. That's the rule. Not every pregnancy ends in blood and silence. Sometimes they're carried to term, quietly, secretly. If you're careful, you can hide the swell for months beneath corsets, ruffles and dim lighting. The madam doesn't like it, but she tolerates it if the girl keeps working, keeps smiling, keeps earning. Maeve only steps in when the customers start to notice. You've heard of one girl who wore binding belts and drank pennyroyal tea every morning, praying it would make the problem go away. Didn't. She laboured behind the saloon one spring night, with 2 girls holding her hand and Maeve muttering prayers she claimed not to believe in. The baby didn't survive. No one spoke of it again. Once, a woman named Clara, older than most, strong-hipped and sharp-eyed, carried a child to term and made a deal with Maeve. She worked up until the 8th month, then gave birth in the back room and handed the baby off to a widow who lived out near the edge of town. The widow had already lost 3 of her own. They say Clara visited once a month, leaving money on the porch wrapped in a silk handkerchief. Then one day she stopped going. No one knows why. Sometimes you wonder how many children are out there, running through alleyways, climbing over fences, never knowing their mothers wore red satin and curled their hair with hot iron every night to keep them fed. You wonder how many women carry the weight of those choices in their ribs. One night you find Daisy crying behind the dressing curtain. She tries to hide it with a handkerchief, but her face is raw. "I missed it," she whispers. 2 months now." She doesn't need to say more. You sit with her for an hour, neither of you speaking. You just hold her hand and let the silence wrap around you both like a blanket stitched out of fear. The next day she's back on the floor in full makeup, laughing too loud and dancing like nothing's wrong. But her smile doesn't reach her eyes. You think about your own near misses, how close you've come, how many times you've prayed, bargained and whispered unto a God you barely believe in, promising anything for one more day of a flat belly and a quiet body. The fear is constant. It hums under everything you do. Every delayed cycle feels like a noose tightening. You count days like a banker. You boil herbs in secret. You bribe a travelling midwife for a tincture that tastes like turpentine and burns like betrayal going down. You cry into your basin, sometimes from relief, sometimes from not knowing which feeling to have at all. One historical fact. In the late 1800s, many saloon girls who became pregnant faced overwhelming stigma and limited options, often forced into dangerous abortions, secret births, or the surrender of their children. One quirky fact. Some girls tied charms or tiny dolls to their corset laces as fertility tokens, either to prevent pregnancy or, oddly enough, to encourage a lucky match they hoped might make an honest woman of them. One debate. Historians argue whether women in saloons had reproductive agency or were victims of an unrelenting system that commodified their bodies while punishing their biology. You start to notice the signs more now. The girl who suddenly wears looser dresses, one who stops drinking, one who stares out the window too long, palm pressed to her stomach, like she's trying to feel something move. Some of them make it out. You hear whispers about a girl who married a shopkeeper in another town, raised 2 children, never told them where she used to work. Others leave and vanish entirely, names swallowed by time, and some never leave at all. You keep your own secret list now, names you'll never forget. Girls who came and went, hearts swollen, bodies torn, Lottie, Clara, Daisy. The one who left a note on her mirror that said only, "Forgive me, I tried." At night, you lie awake and listen to your heartbeat like it's ticking down. You run your fingers over your belly. Flat, for now. Safe, for now. You whisper thanks to whatever power might be listening, not because you believe, but because you're afraid not to. The telegram arrives at dusk, folded crisp and pinned under the edge of Maeve's whiskey glass. No name on the envelope, just your first initial and the saloon's address. It waits for you all through the supper rush, under the low glow of lanterns, through the clatter of poker chips and the bark of trees shoving out another drunk who thought he could punch his way to a discount. You don't notice it at first, but Maeve does. She watches you from across the room, her gaze like a nail holding the world still. When you finally approach the bar, she doesn't say anything, just slides the envelope toward you like it's not even hers to hand over. The paper smells like tobacco and horse sweat, probably passed through a dozen hands before it landed here. You stare at it for a while. Messages that come through wires are rarely good news. They're too short for softness, too fast for kindness. You take it upstairs before opening it, heart knocking in your chest like it's trying to get out first. The message is only 9 words. Your father is dead. Come home if you care. No signature, no tenderness, just that. You sit with it for a long time, the scrap of paper going damp between your fingers. Your father. You try to summon a face, but it's been so long since you've seen him, the edges are blurry. You remember the sound of his boots more than his voice. The way he looked right through you the night you left. His face when he read the letter you wrote, telling him you weren't marrying the banker's son, that you were heading west, that you'd make your own way. He didn't write back. You don't cry. You thought maybe you would, but all you feel is a low ache in your stomach, like you skipped dinner. You sit on the edge of the bed, telegram in one hand, the other trailing the bedspread like you're waiting for something to fall from the ceiling and tell you what to do next. Maeve doesn't ask, but you catch her watching you more that week, like she's waiting to see if this is the thing that breaks you. It isn't, at least not right away. The next day you work your shift like always. You dance, you pour drinks, you smile at a man who smells like pickles and curses, like a priest with a secret. You even laugh once, a real one, sharp and unexpected. But your head's somewhere else, floating through memories you swore you'd left buried under the dirt of your old hometown. You remember your mother's shawl, the chipped tea kettle, the creak behind the house where you'd hide your diary in a hollow log. You remember the first time you saw a train, how loud it was, how final. You wanted to jump on it, even then. You left that town like it was on fire, and now it's calling you back. The girls notice the shift in you. Ruby asks if you're feeling all right. You nod. Frenchie doesn't ask. She just starts walking you home after shifts again, like she did in your first month. You let her. And neither of you talk about it. You start to weigh your options, like you're squinting at cards you can't quite read. Go back? For what? A funeral? A family who sent you off like a bad smell and didn't bother with goodbyes? Maybe your father changed. Maybe he regretted it. Maybe that telegram was written by your sister, or your cousin, or some neighbour who saw your name scribbled in the old prayer book and decided you should know. Or maybe it's just one last attempt to drag you back to the place you barely survived. One night you ask Maeve, "You ever think about going back?" She doesn't look up from her ledger. "To what?" she says. "The life that almost killed me?" You nod slowly. That sounds about right. One historical fact. During the late 1800s, many women who left home to work in Western saloons were effectively disowned by their families and only contacted again during moments of tragedy or death. One quirky fact. Some girls kept memory boxes under their beds, small collections of trinkets from home, buttons, lace scraps, a photo, a lock of hair, tokens they refused to carry in daylight but couldn't quite throw away. One debate. Scholars still discuss whether returning home for women who worked in saloons was an act of forgiveness, self-erasure, or rebellion against the stigma that followed them. By the end of the week, the telegram has moved into your corset pocket, folded flat against your ribs. Not for sentiment, for weight, for the reminder that you came from somewhere, even if it never claimed you back. You think about buying a train ticket. You walk past the depot twice. The schedule is posted behind glass, but you don't go inside. Not yet. You think about what you'd wear, whether you'd be recognised, whether you'd be welcomed, whether you'd step off the platform and feel nothing at all. And then one evening a man comes into the saloon who looks just enough like your brother that it knocks the wind out of you. Same eyes, same crooked nose, same way of squinting like he's deciding whether or not you're worth the effort. He doesn't recognise you. Of course he doesn't. But for a moment you wonder if someone back home sent him, to find you, to bring you back. He orders a drink. You serve him, you don't say a word. Later you burn the telegram in the ashtray next to your bed. The flame is quick and mean. You watch it curl the paper into black petals and float away. It smells like finality. The next morning you lace your boots, pin your hair and step out onto the porch like nothing happened. And maybe it didn't. Maybe it was just another ghost knocking on the door, and maybe that door is better left closed. You forget what silence sounds like until you ride out past the edge of town. It's late. Too late for a girl like you to be out alone, but you needed to get away. Not far, just beyond the noise, the thick perfume of cigar smoke and sweat. Beyond the cracked piano and clatter of coins and boots. Tree lent you his horse without asking why. Maybe he just saw the look in your eye. You ride out past the river where the cottonwoods lean like gossiping old men, past the broken fence where the horses get loose sometimes, past the last lantern's glow. And there, in that flat, endless dark, you stop. The silence presses in around you like a soft blanket. No voices, no music, no glass breaking in the background. Just the sound of your own breath and the wind brushing the tall grass like fingers through hair. It's the first time in months you feel like the world isn't watching. You slide down from the saddle and sit on a rock, skirt pulled up just enough to keep the dust off your hem. You look up. The stars are out in full bloom, big, bold, louder than any man you've ever met. They remind you how small you are. And for once, that doesn't scare you. It feels like permission. You think about how long it's been since you felt anything without performance attached to it. Every smile, every laugh, every gentle touch in the saloon is calculated. It has to be. Your emotions are a currency. Spend too much and you're empty. Hold too tight and you turn cold. But here, under the stars with no one watching, you finally let go. And that's when you cry. Not the soft kind, not the dramatic handkerchief-dabbed nonsense men expect. No, this is deep-belly, ugly sobbing. You cry for Lottie, for Clara, for the girls who didn't make it through the winter, for the time you almost didn't. You cry for the life you left behind and the one you built from scraps and grit. You cry until your face is raw and your chest is empty. Then you laugh. Because if anyone saw you now, they'd swear you were going crazy. But you feel clearer than you have in years. You start talking, just to the night, to yourself, maybe to God. You say the names of girls you've known, like you're afraid the wind might forget them if you don't. You speak out loud the things you're never allowed to admit inside the red feather. That you're tired, that you want out, that you love and hate that place in equal measure. That some days you look in the mirror and don't recognise the girl under the rouge and powder, and some days you do, and that's worse. You confess things that the stars can keep. After a while you get quiet again. You listen, you breathe, you pick a blade of grass and snap it in half between your fingers like it owes you something. And for just a moment you let yourself imagine a different version of you, one who never left home, or one who left and stayed gone, one who owns a brewery, or a bookstore, or a quiet house with a porch and no customers ever. But even as you picture it, you feel the shape of the red feather in your bones. It's part of you now. No matter where you go, it'll come with you. The sounds, the smells, the faces, the lessons. You've become something inside those walls, something forged in sweat and sequins and smoke. You're not ashamed of it. You just don't want it to be the whole story. One historical fact: many women of the Old West found moments of solitude in the natural world, often riding or walking alone in the early hours, using the land itself as the only space where they could breathe without being watched or judged. One quirky fact: some saloon girls carried small notebooks hidden in their corsets, not to write poetry or love letters, but to record bits of overheard gossip, debts owed, and dreams too dangerous to say aloud. One debate. Scholars still dispute whether the emotional toll of saloon life led to widespread burnout among women, or if those brief escapes into solitude, sisterhoods, and fantasy were enough to keep them whole. You stay out until the moon has shifted in the sky, until your cheeks have dried and your boots are soaked in dew. Then you mount up again and ride back into town, slow and steady, letting the silence ride behind you like a second shadow. The saloon is still lit when you return, it always is, but you don't go in. Not yet. You slip around the side, climb the stairs to your room, and wash your face in the basin with water gone tepid. You press your palm to your chest, just to feel your own heartbeat. Still there, still steady. You unlace your corset slowly, like it's something sacred, and fold your dress with more care than usual. You set your boots by the window, open the shutters just a crack to let in the night breeze, and before you lie down, you pull out the little tin from beneath the floorboard. The money, the key, the folded scrap of the pamphlet you didn't burn. You add something new, a torn page from a magazine Maeve tossed last week. It has a photo of a woman riding a horse, hat low, boots high, alone on the trail. The caption reads, "Some women don't need a destination, they just need to ride." You tuck it in with the others, snap the lid shut and slide it back under the floor. Then you sleep, deep, dreamless, and for the first time in a long while, like you're not waiting to be chased. You always thought your last night at the Red Feathersome would come with a bang. A fist fight, a slap, maybe even a kiss that changed everything. But when it finally comes, it arrives quiet as a whisper. No fanfare, no goodbye parade, just you, a packed satchel, and the morning wind picking up dust like it's trying to remember your name. It starts the way most endings do, unexpected, inevitable. You wake up before sunrise, not because you have to, not because someone's yelling or a bottle's crashed to the floor, just because your body knows it's time. The kind of knowing that sits behind your ribs and says, "Go now," before you lose your nerve. You sit up in bed and look around the room that's been yours for too long. The scuffed floorboards, the cracked mirror, the dresser with the third drawer that always sticks. You know every creak, every loose nail, every water stain on the ceiling that looks like a wolf howling at the moon. You run your fingers along the windowsill and catch a splinter. Small, sharp, a parting gift. You dress slow, not like you're rushing away from something, more like you're peeling yourself out of a second skin. No corset today, no rouge, no performance, just a plain skirt, a cotton blouse, and your riding boots, worn down at the heels. You pull the tin box from beneath the floorboard, the one that's held your dreams and secrets like a church pew holds prayers, and open it for the last time. Inside, money folded neat and tight, the brass key, the torn pamphlet, the photograph of the woman on horseback. You add one last thing, your name written on the back of a red feather dance card. You stare at the letters like you're meeting them for the first time. You don't know who that girl is anymore, but you figure she deserves to come with you. You snap the lid shut, stuff it into your satchel and sling it over your shoulder. Downstairs, the saloon is still asleep. The chairs are upturned on tables, the smell of spilled whiskey clings to the air, and the piano sits silent for once, keys dusted with ash from the night before. Billy is curled up on the floor behind the bar, snoring like a freight train. You step around him quietly. Maeve is there, of course, at the far end of the room, lighting a cigar and watching you like she's been waiting since midnight. She doesn't say anything at first, just squints through the smoke and tilts her head. "You're really going then?" You nod. She taps the ash off her cigar into a glass. No one ever leaves at dawn. Makes the place feel too honest. You smile small. Figured it wouldn't know what to do with a proper goodbye. There's a long pause. Then she walks over, pulls something from her coat pocket, and presses it into your palm. It's a silver coin. Old, worn, probably Spanish. "Take it," she says, "for luck or bribery, whichever gets you farther." You close your fingers around it. You don't cry. You promised yourself you wouldn't. She leans in closer, voice low. "You were good at this, you know, better than most. I didn't want to be." "That's why you're still alive," she says, and then turns away. You step outside into the dawn and breathe. It's a wide sky morning, the kind where everything feels bigger than it should. The wind's soft but steady, tugging at your hem, pushing you forward like it's in on the plan. The sun's just cresting over the hills, painting the town in gold and shadow. The street's quiet, but not empty. A few miners shuffle toward the fields, shoulders slumped. A milk wagon rattles past. A kid runs by barefoot, chasing a chicken with more enthusiasm than sense. You pass Frenchie on the corner. She's smoking a cigarette, hair loose, leaning against a post like she's been planted there forever. You leaving, or just walking dramatically? She asks. Both, she nods. Write if you find anything worth telling. I will. You won't. You find Tree by the livery, brushing down the horse you borrowed that night under the stars. He doesn't speak, just nods once, solemn. You think about saying something meaningful, but all that comes out is, thanks for not asking questions. He grunts. You are always better at answers. You saddle up and mount like you've done it 1,000 times. You have, just never with this much finality. The trail out of town is dry and familiar, cutting through the hills like an old scar. You don't look back right away, not until you're past the ridge, where the town shrinks into a collection of roofs and smoke. You pause there, let the horse drink from a stream, and finally turn in the saddle. From here, the Red Feather is just another building, a box of secrets, a place you lived, a place you survived. You wonder who's opening up right now, who's slipping into your old corset, who's lighting the lamps, who's starting their first shift tonight, heart racing, smile trembling. You wish them luck, you hope they get out. One historical fact. Many saloon girls who left their trade did so quietly, often disappearing into nearby towns under new names, marrying into anonymity, or opening small businesses where no one asked questions. One quirky fact. Some girls left calling cards with cryptic signatures behind mirrors or under floorboards, small tokens that read like confessions to anyone who stumbled across them years later. One debate. Historians still argue whether leaving the life was an act of escape, triumph, or loss, if those women who walked away truly found peace, or just found a quieter struggle. You ride for hours, the town fading behind you, the horizon stretching ahead like a promise. You don't know where you're going exactly. Doesn't matter. You have money. You have a name. You have your story. And most important, you're free to write the rest of it. You ride until the sun is high overhead, until the dust coats your boots and your shoulders ache, and the wind stops trying to ask where you're headed. You pass creaking windmills and slouched fences, a vulture turning lazy circles overhead. At one point you spot a battered signpost half sunk in a ditch, its lettering faded, one arrow pointing east, the other snapped clean off. You take it as a metaphor, laugh a little too loud, and keep moving west. Always west. No one chases you. No one comes galloping after you with tears or regrets or second chances. That's not the kind of life you lived, and this isn't that kind of ending. You didn't get a white knight. You didn't ride off into the sunset in a gown, but you did ride off. And in a place like the Red Feather, that's a victory with your name carved deep into it. Some nights, much later, you dream of the saloon, not as it was, but as a stage, with velvet curtains and gaslight glow. You see Maeve behind the bar, Frenchie at her corner table, Ruby spinning on the floor with her red dress flaring like fire. They never speak in these dreams. They just look at you like they're still watching, still keeping score. You wake with your hand on your chest, heart beating steady. You sit up, stretch, light a lamp in whatever room you've found for the week. Maybe a boarding house, maybe a rented room over a dry goods store, maybe a cabin near a river where no one asks your name. You touch the brass key on the chain around your neck and feel it warm from your skin. You don't always know what to do next, but you know what not to do, and that alone can carry you a long, long way. Some nights you drink tea instead of whiskey. Some nights you read until the candle burns low. Some nights you watch the stars until you remember each girl's name, each one who danced beside you and survived long enough to be more than a story. And sometimes when you're feeling particularly bold, you take out the coin Maeve gave you, toss it in the air and ask the wind a question. It never answers. But then again, it doesn't need to, because you already know the ending. You wrote it yourself.